Okay, hello. Welcome to my stream. I'm Chris Wee. You can call me LEC, and I'm going to be continuing our set review. This will be part 5, and we are now on agility, or green. Right now, we are rank 19 in constructed, and we are in the Grand Champion versus Arena, rank 1. So we feel really good about the Alliance War set. We waited to do this series until we were both competent in Versus Arena and in Ladder. So next time there's a set where I'm looking at doing a set preview. So the difference between a set preview and a set review is a set preview is more like, look, I don't even know if any of these cards are good, and I'm just going to talk about the cards as I see them. A set review is will maybe come out after I've had a chance to both play with the cards or go against them, right? So I might do a set preview after the set comes out, but before I've had a chance to really give the cards a go. Miss Dornlater. Dorn. Oh, he's off. Okay.
Hey everyone, focus right here on the...
Yeah. Okay. Back alley footpad. Give a creature cover. 0 cost, 1/1 Dark Elf. I think this card is very playable in Constructed and Versus Arena. These days, when you see a 0 cost card, you can think, wait, Swindler's Market loves 0 cost cards, so Back Alley Footpad already can fit in those combo decks. Giving a creature cover is definitely a way to protect one of those combo pieces, like a Thieves Guild Fence. A Thieves Guild Fence likes Back Alley Footpad, and Disciple of Namira likes Back Alley Footpad, because getting cover is a decent protection, is a decent way to get protection against creatures. For its stats, 1/1 is 0 cost. It's perfectly fine. But when you're in green, you usually don't want to have 0 cost creatures unless they're doing something more than a goblin. The goblins is like 2/2/1 for 0. So if you're trying to be aggressive, there are better options. And getting small creatures on the board like this to aggro someone down doesn't feel like it's in green's. It's not one of green's strengths. A Nord Firebrand, for example, 0 cost, 1/1 charge. So charge is much better for an aggressive card. Back Alley Footpad is really a discounted card. But if you play this card, do you really care about that discount? In Scout colors, you can ramp. So if you're a Scout player, I don't understand why you would want this card outside of combos, because Scout does run 0 cost market, Swindler's Markets combos. Where in those decks, Magicka isn't a problem. So if Magicka is not a problem, you don't care about discounts. This card's not very threatening, so aggressive lists can't really make good use of it. Doesn't even have charge, so it's by default worse than Nord Firebrand in aggressive lists. In a control list, its stats are too weak and meaningless to really contest the board to protect you, because early game, the only reason why you want any creatures is to protect you. So this card doesn't fit in. And it is worth noting this creature can target itself, so it's not a complete dead card. Like if a control player has this in their hand and they have no creatures on the board and they play this on itself, it does something. But that's also kind of sketch, because couldn't you put back alley footpad in the stealth in the shadow lane? So it's a little funny to even play this card if you're not targeting another creature. Also, one of the things you want with zero cost cards is you want to be able to play them on turn 1 with something else. So Nord Firebrand, you could play it with a Relentless Raider. You could play it with the Ring of Magicka, with an Orc Clan Captain. Back alley footpad, what are you trying to pair it with? Because a zero cost at its most efficient would be played on turn 1 with another card. But if you're playing it with another 1-drop, you're basically emptying your hand. And as a control player, that feels a little... That's not the right game plan, because if you are the first person to play a creature card, that means the other player could dodge that lane and put a card at the other lane, and you're forced to have a zero cost 1/1 who may not do anything for you. So like if you're a control player versus another control player and you put it in turn 1 in field lane, your aggressive opponent could go shadow lane, and then now you're put in a position where back alley footpad can only attack them and not attack and defend you with any by attacking any creatures. So he can trigger Empower. He can maybe start giving some early triggers on Empower, but that 1/1 toothpick, best case scenario, is going to do 4 damage to their face, which is not threatening them, and at the same time unable to assist you. And it's unlikely that if you're playing this card, you're going to be breaking runes with him, because there's nothing good inherent about him that says this guy is a rune-breaking kind of card. Like, if you're in a control deck, you don't want to break runes because you want to just survive. And if you play this guy, he's being a toothpick, slowly hurting them and not offering much resistance. Again, we can't be too hard on him because he's a zero-cost card. But we should think, how does this zero-cost card synergize with other cards, and under what conditions would a zero-cost card be most Magicka efficient? The turn 1 play with another 1-draw. Morong Tong Assassin seems like potentially one of the only good mono green plays on turn 1 with this card. But if you were to do that, unfortunately for you, the stealth is irrelevant. If you put cover on a card turn 1, that card that card wasn't going to get attacked anyway. So this card is really not even to get the most value out of its ability portion, not to be played on turn 1. But to get the most out of its zero cost, you want to have played it on turn 1, right? As a arena card, I think this card is very, very playable. Some arena matches are decided turn 3, 4, 5. And in those instances, it's really a matter of who can control the board with what by turn 4. This card's not an all-star doing that, but in versus arena, my philosophy is if you have 3 cards to pick, okay, anytime you do a draft, you're going to have some bad cards, because there's no time I've drafted stuff where I'm happy with every single 3 cards sent your way. So you basically decide, look, you're going to get bad cards in your deck somehow. Your job is damage control. When I get 3 bad cards in front of me, choose the worst one, choose the best out of the worst, and then if he gets put in the deck in my opening hand, mulligan it, and if you top deck it, It's okay, don't cry. Don't say this is a bad card, I don't play it. Usually you don't have the luxury to choose like that. You're now on to plan B, option B, as Sheryl Sandberg would say. You need to kick the shit out of option B. You've got back alley footpad in your deck. Now it's time to maximize the value you can get. Squeeze every part of value out of back alley footpad that you can. He's a 0/1/1 that gives you cover. Look, make him work. Make him advance to your win condition. I mean, he's already in your deck if you drafted him. And if you drafted him, hopefully it's because the other two cards were way too potato. So this card at least could attack. At least could potentially give another creature another attack. And in those instances, what you're looking to do is you have a high value creature in the field lane who's damaged. They are putting creatures in contested, and you're playing back alley footpad not as a turn one play because you mulliganed him away, hopefully, and you didn't get him in your mulligan. You're actually putting your largest attacker back into shadow, into cover, a field lane creature, so that he can get another attack in, while not spending any magicka. And this is very efficient play in an aggressive versus arena match, because if both players are breaking each other's runes, you have more than enough cards to play. And this is something I've been experiencing as a Nord Firebrand player this week. This week, I think, was the first week I really started playing Nord Firebrands, and I do not regret it. Like, Nord Firebrand's 3-ofs. At first, as a control player, you feel weird. I don't want these zero-cost creatures. Why do I want zero-cost creatures? I could put 1-cost creatures. The conditions under which Nord Firebrand are most amazing is in the aggro mirror, where both people have more than enough cards in their hands, and they're just slamming things down. The reason they have more than enough cards is both people have hit each other and broken runes, and now it's just a race. It's not a card game. It's not a card. Cards don't matter. Magicka does. That's when you have like turn 4. For example, you have turn 4. You've got 2 of your runes broken. You've got a board presence. They're on one lane. You're on one lane. And you've got like 7 cards in your hand. This happens. Like, it's possible to have like 6 or 7 cards in your hand because people have been breaking runes. And when you have 6 or 7 cards in your hand, it's not a good feeling if some of those are like Encanos and some of them are Tazgats. It's a great feeling when some of them are Nord Firebrands. Like, when they start cracking runes and you've got these Nord Firebrands packed in your deck, and then you've just top decked a couple Nord Firebrands off your rune breaks, you're like, wow, not only can I play with my magicka, my 4 magicka, my Bleak Coast Troll, or put in some kind of other creature, we can even dictate trades, because there's in aggro mirrors, there are a lot of 1 toughness creatures left alive on the board that Nord Firebrands operate as free removal. And that's the kind of situation that you could see back alley footpad come into in a versus arena mode, where there are a lot of runes being broken early, and you don't really have enough magicka to play multiple cards, so back alley footpad can come in as sort of a Nord Firebrand delayed a little bit green version with the ability to protect the creature. Next card, Bandari Opportunist. So Bandari Opportunist, for a time, was one of my favorite cards in the Alliance War set. 1 cost, Khajiit, 1/1, charge, pilfer. Shuffle a Bandari Opportunist with summon, draw a card into your deck. So if you're not familiar with how this card works, you play this guy, turn 1, he charges and hits them. A funny animation happens, a copy of him goes into your deck, and that copy of him is even better than the one that you just played. That copy becomes a cycle card. That card now says, draw a card when you play this card. So it's basically 1 cost that replaces itself as a card advantage card. So it's a 1 cost card that lets you see your next card in your deck. while dealing 1 damage and putting a new copy into your deck. So this guy can make many copies of himself. So you put 1, hits the face. Let's say you draw the next one. You play that card, he draws you a card, and then he can hit the face, and then he puts another version of that special one. It's worth noting that when they die and go to the grave, they are treated differently. So a Bandari Opportunist that's organic, the first 3 that you put in your deck, is different than one that has been given, who has been added to the deck, shuffled into the deck by the previous abilities, and says summon, draw a card into your deck. So when you use a Ordurnian Necromancer, or you have any kind of ability to sort of bring these cards back into your deck, Journey to Sovngrad, shuffle those dead ones in your deck, those ones will have a green bold name text, and those cards, they keep their draw card, which is pretty good considering many people use Ordurnian Necromancers to just bring back camels, and Journey to Sovngrad would make these 6/6s with charge, draw a card. Like, that is pretty good for Journey to Sovngrad deck. There was an Abomination deck that ran this card in such a thing. Basically, by turn 7, a scout deck, they could draw through their whole deck, and they used Bandari Opportunists with Journey to Sovngrad to make their deck a bunch of Bandari Opportunists with 6/6 attack by turn 8. So it's actually physically possible to build a deck that cycles through 50 cards at the time. At that stage, it's a combo deck. It's a late game combo. It's funny. It's a combo deck. It's a late game deck, but if it can get its combo off early, it's not really late game. It can get it pretty much mid range, which is pretty impressive. One of the reasons why I like Opportunist is because he's a new charge creature for agility. He's very fast. Agility and strength are the only 2 classes with charge. And he just begs, please put items on me. The reason is, it's because items usually just need a charge creature to put on. And if you just have one of these in your hand, he's very cheap. It's like, this item gets charged for one Magicka cost. And you don't feel bad about playing him because you'll get more in your deck. So like, if your win condition involved using him and items, you could basically play him whenever you see him, and no hesitation, because you know that later on you're going to draw more because he's created more. An item that I've found success putting on him is Heirloom Greatsword. So using Bandari Opportunist with Heirloom Greatsword, we turn this 1 Magicka, 1 attack guy into 6 attack for 7 Magicka. Kind of expensive, but charge. And when he dies, if he's not silenced, you get that sword back, and you can go in again with Heirloom Greatsword. Tome of Alterations, daggers, they're all nice. Another way to make Bandari Opportunist get even more value are things like Praetorian Commander. 6 cost, 3/3, willpower. When you play this card, all creatures in your deck get +1/+1. If your Bandari Opportunists get buffed by that, they actually double in their attack and defense, which means they're 100% more valuable, or 100% faster at killing your opponent. Divine Fervor does the same thing, but becomes on board, so that's for a monk or a Empire of Cyrodiil deck could run Bandari Opportunist with these cards. And he's interesting because he's good enough where you can feel like if you put him into a conscription deck, which pulls out 2-drops or lower cost creatures, Bandari Opportunist doesn't feel quite as bad. Like, if you pulled him over a 2-drop, you don't think Bandari Opportunist is a bad card. Even sometimes, let's say you had used Bandari Opportunist early in the game, he shuffled a draw 1 card, then you use Tullius's Conscription. If you hit the draw 1 card one, you get a draw card off of him. And most people like Conscription because of drawing cards. That's like the main reason, thinning out cards and drawing cards. So Bandari Opportunist is a good enough 1-drop where people are willing to put it, even though you can have access to other 2-drops of your choice, people are willing to slot him in. There is an interesting pseudo-infinite combo. Well, there's an infinite combo. So basically, if you have the Transistor Stone and Power of Cyrodiil card and Bandari Opportunist, enough Bandari Opportunists in your deck, you could potentially infinite combo them, because Bandari Opportunist as a 0-cost card, you could make his cost become 0, and you can keep on playing him. If you have a creature in both lanes, you can play him, attack, put one in, and if you have enough of them in your deck, which is possible, because the thing is, it gets enormously crazy. Like if you have 4 of these guys on the field attacking, making copies of them, basically your chances of drawing this card becomes increasingly greater. And with each turn that board is not responded, you get more and more copies. So you can keep on getting. You can basically, it's possible to have a turn that you could play 20 of them, where you just play like you attack with 4, you get 4 into your deck, you start drawing them. Then you just keep playing Bandari Opportunist over and over and over again. And if you keep playing it over and over again, if your deck only consists of Bandari Opportunist, it's possible to completely kill them, especially if you have things like Divine Fervor or Praetorian Commanders. Divine Fervor would be better because Praetorian Commander would not actually buff the newer one. So it might have buffed your whole deck when you played it, but after, if you use Bandari Opportunist to shuffle more guys in, they didn't get the +1/+1, versus Divine Fervor would actually affect them immediately. So you do see Bandari Opportunist played in some of these 0-cost Swindler's Market-based strategies using Transistor Stone, because he can add damage and he can add these cycle cards, which basically can create more market triggers. On top of that, under the rare conditions where you have enough Bandari Opportunists in the field, you can basically infinite combo them. But people have overlooked this deck a little bit because they think it's a meme. And maybe it is, because first of all, Bandari Opportunist, a board of Bandari Opportunist could get wiped immediately. And like Bandari Opportunist as your win condition is a little bit inconsistent in a 75 card deck. But it does happen. You just, like, the reason why it's inconsistent is there's Cast into Time can banish all copies of it, Piercing Twilight can banish all copies. They just need 1 in the grave, banish the whole thing, right? So it's possible to banish the whole thing. 2, it's possible that you don't draw enough Bandari Opportunists fast enough for that to even happen, because you need to have a critical mass of Bandari Opportunist to shuffle enough Bandari Opportunists in your deck where you get into this infinite loop. And also it's actually a little frustrating to play, because when you do get into this situation, usually your opponent concedes, not because you killed them, but because you take so long to do your turn, because the animation for Bandari Opportunist right now is too long. It takes too long to really juice this. This is relevant because let's say you had a turn, there's a turn timer. Let's say you had an infinite loop and you could play, if you played 30 Bandari Opportunists in a row, they would die. Actually, I don't think you have a chance to play 30 Bandari Opportunists in one turn because of the animation. You might have had a chance to play 30 Opportunists over 2 turns because you can like half, but that's, your combo gets shut down by the turn timer. And combo decks have suffered this in the past. So Nixox combo. I played against Silverfuse a couple weeks ago, I believe, maybe even a month ago, but she was playing Telvanni Nixox combo, and I've never seen somebody get more Magicka. I think she got 100 and like 100 something Magicka. I don't know if she was trolling or if she was just like playing around or something, but she got like 120 Magicka. She had a full board of stuff, and she was like one spell from killing me, but she ran out of time. So she just ran out of time. So it's possible that so when she was comboing off, I don't know if she got carried away by the idea of like, let's see how much Magicka we could generate, because I don't think I've seen so much Magicka. It might not have been 100, but it was a lot. It was a lot of Magicka. Like we're talking, this is definitely more than 80 Magicka, and this was definitely with like Lyneth, doppelgangers, multiple Nixoxes. All she needed was a Mentor's Ring and a Viper. But she ran out of time, so she could not even get her attack off. If I remember correctly, the Viper came down, but the Mentor's Ring did not. So that's the kind of... And that can happen in any combo deck. It happens even in let's see, last Master Series qualifier. Please Don't Hack Me. Frenzy and Please Don't Hack Me were playing the same list, Abomination. They were playing Empire Abomination, which is
zero cost combo deck that has Bandari Opportunists in it, if I'm not mistaken. And they actually had no. They both had infinite turns. They both had turns where their deck went infinite, as in their deck could theoretically play infinite cards and play their entire deck in a single turn, but they couldn't do it because of the turn timer. So that means they were limited by APM, which is kind of funny to say because in computer card games, you usually don't think about APM. And I've never thought of APM in computer card games. I actually started playing computer card games because I was like, oh, this is going to be less APM, so it's going to be less stress and strain on my wrists, for example. Because MOBAs can be very straining on your body if you play them too much, right? If you play 40 minutes of like 200 APM, one game can cause a lot of fatigue, and if you do multiple games, you're like really tired. But computer card games, you think I can chill, I can take my time, there's no hurry. But in these combo-oriented decks involving a lot of zero-cost creatures, and with the turn timer, I've found out that these combos, they actually are very they're very skill testing, because first you need to know you have to have the knowledge of how to do the combo. Then you have a timer on pulling the combo off within time, and then you in many of these cases combos of going infinite, you theoretically could do the combo forever until they're dead, but you're now limited by things like animations, because the animations can really slow down the combo. So you have no time to think. Like in the perfect world, the player who knows exactly what he's supposed to do doesn't think, doesn't take any time, and he just goes. So those combo players, they need to plan what they're going to do during their opponent's turn. And they really don't want to, before they have the combo turn off, they actually should take the full turn to think about what they're going to do. So let's say they know they're so close to comboing off with infinite Bandari Opportunists, and then they need to know, okay, well, when we have that infinite turn, they are at 28 life, so getting 28 Bandari Opportunists on the ground is really, really hard. So there's going to be no hesitation, no delay. They're just going to keep on going. So they have to plan out and sequence mentally the turn before during their opponent's turn, or perhaps in the turn before their opponent's turn, so they have 2 turns to just think about it. So then that when it goes to go time, they don't think about it. All instinct, just go. I'm sure Sparky Pants Studios, I love the animation for Bandari Opportunist, but for the love of combo decks that want to use it and his playability, his animation is actually a detriment. It's actually a bad thing, because it's slow. It takes up turn timer, and it doesn't really get anything done. It's like Khajiit da 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 da, and then it's like a 3 or 4 second animation. If you have 30 seconds, how can you get 20 opportunists in? And that can be very relevant, because let's pretend you found your opportunist combo. Chances are your opponent wasn't doing nothing. So maybe you found your opportunist combo, but you're almost dead due to aggressive deck. Maybe you're against a Telvanni combo deck, and maybe they've found their combo. So there's a race component too. You found your combo, great. That probably late game, maybe they've found their combo. Bewildering Speed. 1 cost action, move a friendly creature in each lane, and give them +1/+1. Interesting. I've never seen this card. I never played this card. But I was playing with a movement deck literally today with Move, so I'm a little excited to see Move, because Monk is an archetype that I have not had a chance to play much, but I have had a lot of success with Monk in Versus Arena. So my favorite class in Versus Arena is Monk. Why is Monk my favorite class? Prophecies. High prophecies count. Lots of relevant prophecies. Cloud Resolutionist, Shining Saint. Those are combat tricks. There are a lot of combat tricks in Monk that make it really easy to control the field lane with massive tempo swings. Another example of that is access to lethal. So I personally recommend drafting that 2 card cost in green from Isle of Madness that gives you 2 give this creature lethal, or the 4-cost 4/6. The reason is being able to give low-statted creatures lethal in Monk gives you the potential to trade up so hard. Like you could take a 1-drop and take out a 10 Magicka cost card with that lethal, right? And that's something that wards are not as prevalent in Versus Arena. Wards are so popular in constructed play because you can put them in your deck. Ward is such a good keyword, arguably the best keyword. It's close between charge and ward. And drain, those are probably the 3 best, but drain is the best in certain circumstances. Charge is the best in some circumstances. When there are like no circumstances, ward is like the best keyword. I feel that because they have less ward, lethal becomes much more powerful in Versus Arena. And so Monk's tricks that may not be as successful in constructed become a lot more powerful in Arena. Move is a green sort of specialty. Like being able to move between lanes is one of the special design features that green is supposed to be the only one to have access to. And a lot of decks don't take full advantage of that. People usually use green for card draw. Like green's card draw is best in the game, and the sacrifice green makes is because they have amazing card draw, you have really weak statted creatures. Like Thieves Guild Recruit, Fighters Guild Recruit. A lot of the early game cards in green are hands down inferior. They're below par with the average. They're the weakest, actually. And then purple is supposed to be opposite. Purple is supposed to be, we don't have much card draw, so every card is high quality, kind of like Protoss, and then all their creatures are above average, so purple has access to the best stat line creatures. So that makes Scout a popular combination, green and purple, because green gives you the weakest cards, but card draw. Purple gives you the strongest cards and no card draw. So they kind of balance each other out. But move is a unique feature of green, and it's not used that much, and it's usually used with Shadow Step, because Shadow Step is like amazing card. So Shadow Step, I highly recommend. If you love to play green aggressive decks, or even defensive decks, try adding 3 Shadow Steps into your deck. 3 Shadow Steps. Well, you might be, I don't play a movement deck. Shadow Step doesn't care. Shadow Step's played usually because it draws a card, and the movement is incidental. So Shadow Step, I was late to the game. Like even my aggressive lists, I didn't play 3 Shadow Steps. But once I started putting 3 Shadow Steps in all my decks, it was almost impossible to not smile when you got them. Like if you're aggressive and they put a blocker in one lane, you use Shadow Step. It's like there was nothing better you could have done than Shadow Step there. Like Shadow Step, there has such a high. There are turns where Shadow Step's so good, and the draw 1 is usually really relevant because, let's say you played a Mournhold Trader, like the best card with Shadow Step's Mournhold Trader. You play Mournhold Trader, and you attack him in the face, and then they put in a guard or a lethal creature in front of him. Well, Shadow Step protects that creature, enables him to attack the next turn, and if you were in the field lane, now you're back into cover, so you got cover. So you basically say, 1 cost, this guy doesn't die, he can attack another turn, and he has cover, so if they need to respond, they need to hit him with a removal spell. On top of that, draw your next card, and your next card every time you draw a card, it's really, really valuable. You cannot understand how much drawing a card is worth. Drawing a card means you're getting closer to you want to dig deeper in your deck. The more you draw into your deck, the closer you're getting to your best cards. So if there's a situation you're in, and you're like, look, I know I have this card in my deck, and I wish I had it. It doesn't matter if you actually drew the card off of Shadow Step. Shadow Step got you 1 draw closer to it. So you got it closer. So let's pretend there's a Cliff Racer and it's 6 cards down. Well, that means you're not going to see it on turn 5. If you organically were to just draw cards one at a time, you would not see Cliff Racer on time on turn 5. But if you use Shadow Step, you draw the top card, and that sixth card now is the 5th card, so you're going to see Cliff Racer just on time. And Shadow Step basically allows you to see more cards. So why are we talking about Shadow Step when we're talking about Bewildering Speed? Well, I think some people don't understand why Move is so good. And this card can't be talked about without comparing it to Shadow Step, because Shadow Step is a 3-of in so many good decks. In Slay, it's 3-of. You put a lethal creature into the Shadow lane, like a Venom Tongue. You use your Shadow Step to bring him over to get a kill. It's a good combo. So Bewildering Speed is a bit awkward because it sacrifices the drawing portion of Shadow Step, which is the best part of Shadow Step by far. Like, Shadow Step is a 3-of in so many decks, not because it moves things, but because it draws things. There are so many situations where people are actually playing Shadow Step and they're moving things, and sometimes the movement is even unfavorable. Like, let's say they had a choice. They want their creature in that field lane, and they actually still want it in the field lane, but because they want to advance that draw, they will use Shadow Step anyway to be Magicka efficient. And I'm doing that all the time, and I usually don't feel bad about it. It's because, like, look, I would have preferred him to be in the field lane because maybe there's an Orc Clan captain there. Like, I have an Orc Clan captain in my field lane. I have a Mournhold Trader in the field lane. I don't really want a Shadow Step because he's got +1, +0. But because of the card draw, and because I want to be Magicka efficient, I have 1 Magicka left, and there's nothing to do, I have Shadow Step. I'm not going to Shadow Step necessarily my Orc Clan captain. Maybe I have other creatures in that lane, but maybe I'll Shadow Step the Mournhold Trader, because while he does lose +1, +0, at least there's no guard in Shadow lane, and it puts them in an awkward situation where they have to guard 2 lanes, right? So I try to, like, justify it as, like, well, even though I don't want him to be in the Shadow lane, if he's in the Shadow lane, it's not the worst case scenario. There's some value from that, but what we really want is we want to get closer to our Cliff Racers. So Bewildering Speed loses that component of it, so it tries to maximize value on the move. And a deck that has Bewildering Speed probably already has 3 Shadow Steps. There is no world where Bewildering Speed is a replacement for Shadow Step. Because if you were playing a movement-based deck, you want all the movement-based cards you want, and Shadow Step's the best movement-based card. It's common, it's cheap, 50 soul gems, but it's a 3-of because it's so good. It doesn't matter if you're aggressive, control, mid-range, aggro. So Bewildering Speed is now for decks that basically say, look, Shadow Step's not enough. I like Shadow Step, and I want more Shadow Steps. If you could put 6 Shadow Steps in your deck, you'd probably put 6 Shadow Steps as opposed to 3 Shadow Steps and 3 Bewildering Speeds, to be very honest with you. Because the most situations where you're using Bewildering Speed, you might actually wish that it was a Shadow Step. The reason is, you might want, like, this card says if you have a card, just move a creature in each lane. So if you have 1 card in one lane and you move it, you just move 1 card. If you have 1 card in both lanes, you move both. I don't know if you could choose between moving one of the lanes, because sometimes you're just like, there's a Fighters Guild recruit there. I do not want to move anyone there, and you just want to move 2 guys to 1 lane. Don't think there's a choice there. The text doesn't read it. You may choose. It doesn't say you may move. On the plus side, moving a creature and giving them +1/+1 is a nice aggro play. Only an aggro deck would care about this. So this would have to be played. Hold on one second. Oh, oh yeah, yeah. I'm not. It's okay, Leslie. I'm just. I had to go take care of something. I'll be back. I'll continue. Um, bewildering speed. So to get the most value out of this, you have a creature in both lanes. You move them both, and they both get +1/+1. Now the funny thing about that is, I think the situation where you want to do that is when you literally have no opponents in either lane, which is really weird context for a 1-cost spell. Because let's say they have control of one lane. You use Bewildering Speed. Chances are, one of the lanes is a suicide mission. Like, you moved one guy into one lane. Like, one guy, okay, it's going to be mismatch. Like, it's not going to be symmetrical. It's asymmetric. Either the field lane or the shadow lane is under their, it has more of their, they have more control in one of the lanes. Moving a creature means you're going to move one creature into the lane that is least protected, and then you're going to move one creature that is most protected. The guy who's moving to the most protected lane is on a suicide mission, and he's using Bewildering Speed to basically just get the +1/+1. And that only seems to be making sense when you start talking about, there are a couple of cards in green that say when you move a creature +1/+1. So in the best case scenario, you use this with those cards. So this card doesn't just read +1/+1, but +3/+3. There are those two cost 2/2 caravan guards, +1/+1 when you move this. Then there's another card that's 2-cost card that says when you move a card, get +1/+1. So Bewildering Speed is meant to be a Titanic growth on these small movement-based cards. I'll be right back. As you're here, Lesra, I wanna actually just share with you how hyped I am. I actually got to rank 11 today. This morning I got to rank 11. Not rank 10, rank 11. Then we proceeded to lose games and go back to rank 19. So we're at rank 19. But we're getting close. We're getting really close to rank 10. And we played against good players. Like, we played against Really Boo. Really Boo is one of the top 8 finalists. So he was the finalist in Master Series Qualifier 1. So we actually beat a game. He was on Halalu. So we're not talking about an easy deck to beat. So we're capable of taking out people who are top 8 in Elder Scrolls Legends because he's going to QuakeCon for the competition, which is so hyped. I'm going to get right. It's my last break. It's going to be pretty, yeah, I know, right? I'll show you a rank 19. Rank 19, I was rank 11. So crazy. It's crazy. Like, dude, you lose, if you rank 11, you lose one game, you go to rank 18. So, like, you actually need to have a plus. You really need a very high positive win rate to be, like, rank 10 plus, I think. which is cool. It's cool. Like, I mean, that's how it should work. You shouldn't be rank 1 if you have like a 50% win rate. That would make no sense. But I went 12-4 to get rank 11. Like I won 12 games right here. Right here, we won. We went against crazy decks. We even took Matt Oblivion. I consider him a good player. Like, this guy's been causing me problems. We smashed his Covenant. This is a major deal. Ebonheart aggro taking out Covenant aggro. I've been talking about this nonstop. Covenant aggro is favored all day. We were taking out high-level markets pretty easily. Really cool. And we played against this guy, Asa Marenko, like 3 times, and we won every single game. And he was playing the minion aggro. So it's not like we weren't playing against potatoes here. We were playing against people who know how to play this game. We were playing against Empire aggro. This was like aggro city war. What's really funny is we actually started losing not to aggro decks, but to control and mid-range. That's when we decided to stop playing. Like these 3 losses in a row. So it only took 3 losses to go from 11 to 19, apparently. Or no, it only takes 1 because we broke even. We got 3 losses, 3 wins from this series. But we lost 1 game to Really Boo on his Halalu later, but we beat him over. Oh, it doesn't show. So we beat him and then we lost him. So that was crazy. Like I probably messed up too, because in that game, but I streamed it. So hopefully in the future we'll work on our production values so we can actually make highlight videos that are actually worth watching. Because some of these games are pretty epic. Yeah. So bewildering speed. That was a little bit. Oh, I feel so good moment. But bewildering speed. Okay, so it has a place. There is a movement deck that looks at this card and says, Shadow Step is not enough, or Shadow Shift is not enough. I want more movement actions that cost 1 card. This is a card that is good for those decks, especially when there are 2 color cards, probably Monk, because Monk has the best. I think Monk takes advantage of movement the most. From a competitive point of view, Monk is the only deck that runs movement for the sake of running movement. Like, it actually uses movement to win and advance its win condition. It does use Pilfer as well, but Pilfer and movement kind of go hand in hand. You put guys in Shadow Lane, they put a guard in Shadow Lane, you move them to field lane, boom, boom, Pilfer. So there are some good Monk decks out there. They seem to be kind of difficult to play and difficult to collect cards for. So that's because those Monk-based card. Well, it's kind of fun. Let's think about it. I don't think they're expensive to craft. The normal Monk, like, so if you think of a Nasi, a normal Monk deck, those things aren't difficult to craft. But as we'll see later, there's Undying Siege, for example, which I can't see a casual player crafting that card and actually making it work. Only a hardcore player would craft 3 of them and then use Unrelenting Siege in a Monk deck because it's actually good in a Monk deck. And that's what I'm talking about. There are Monk decks that involve movement and Pilfer that are squeezing the maximum value of move that will be happy to see this card because it has the ability to move 2 creatures and to give one of them +3/+3 and to give another one +2/+2. So there's that card that says when you move a creature, give it +1/+1. Then there's that card that says when you move this creature, give it +1/+1. So those 2 things stack. So when you move the guy that gives himself +1/+1, he gets +1/+1 from his ability, from that other guy's ability, and then from this ability. So he gets +3/+3. So his normal stat line's 2/2. So now he's a 5/5. Theory, it's actually possible to make him 5/5 on turn 2, I believe. Turn 3. No, turn 2. It's possible to. So this is Bewildering Speed's best value is the turn 2 play. Turn 1, Ring of Magicka. You play the guy that says, "Give me +1/+1 when you move me." Turn 2, you play Ring of Magicka. So now you have access to 3 Magicka. You play the 2-cost Magicka cost, move that Walker, move that guy, buff him. Bewildering Speed. They switch places, and then they both get jacked. And it's worth noting that in this maximum case scenario, you actually don't even care about them actually moving. They're kind of moving for the sake of moving, because you're at turn 2. There's no real guards going to be put in front of you, probably. And the very fact that you moved both the cards means that you didn't care about who's guarding what lane anyway, because like you put like so actually it's worth actually to be fair, it is worth doing on turn 2, because when you do that play, what you need to do is you put that guy into the field lane. You put the 2/2 move me guy +1/+1 in field lane, and you put the other guy. No, wrong. You put the first guy into the shadow lane. You put the second guy in shadow lane and pushes him into the field lane. Then on that turn 2, you attack with that guy. That doesn't make sense. So you have to attack after Bewildering Speed, because you need Bewildering Speed to give him +5 to +3/+3. Okay, so he's not going to have stealth at the end of the turn. So you're gonna shuffle it. You're gonna shuffle him over. You see, push him. Yeah. Okay. Turn 1, Ring of Magicka. Play the 2/2 into the shadow lane. You turn 2, play Ring of Magicka. You have access to 3 Magicka. Push him over to the field lane. Then you use Bewildering Speed, so they swap positions, and then you attack. That means the guy in your field lane has cover, and the guy in the shadow lane doesn't have cover. And they just took 5 damage to the face on turn 2. That's the best play with Bewildering Speed. I was trying to find a world where you use Bewildering Speed and you got your guy, your monk dude, into kept cover. But it's hard. You can't keep cover, because if you're in field lane and you push him in the shadow lane, right? You're going to attack after using Bewildering Speed no matter what. There's no way to give him stealth. You could flip their lanes around, so it actually works flipped around. No matter what happens, the guy who attacks loses cover because he's attacking after Bewildering Speed, versus the second guy you played. It doesn't matter where you put him, he gets cover, because if you put him in the field lane, he's going to move into the shadow lane and get cover. If you put him in the shadow lane and move him to the field lane, he's also covered because he had the shadow. So, but I still think that the movement part is kind of gimmicky at that point, because the movement's not really to dodge a card. It could come into play, right? And let's think about it. If it did come into play, it doesn't matter which lane you were in, because they probably put the Fighters Guild recruit. Well, first of all, they can't even play a Fighters Guild recruit because it's their turn. By the time you're doing this, they could. It's their turn 2. So they could put the Fighters Guild recruit in front of your 2/2, but your movement basically says push your 5/5 into the other lane. So he'll dodge the other guy no matter what, pretty much. Outside of that use case, this card is not as cool, because think about it. Oh, you should also think about it. It didn't just buff the 5/5. It actually made the other dude, who's a 3/1, if I'm not mistaken, into a 5/3. A 5/3. So you basically had turn 2 5 attack creatures, which I guess is not something to scoff at. I've certainly lost to this kind of monk deck. These decks usually suffer a little bit from card draw, though, which is okay, because green has the best card draw in the game. So even though the problem with playing this kind of combo is it is a combo. It's early game combo. You need it in opening hand, which is a little bit it's not impossible to get, but it's not guaranteed. And if you do get this combo off, you can have built-in redundancy in your deck design, so you have multiple ways to move your creatures, and you have multiple creatures that benefit from movement. That helps. And then on top of that, it's a 50-card deck, so you're going to have the highest consistency possible in the game, because it doesn't get more consistent than 50 cards. And if you the problem is you empty your holster really fast. So you'll basically, I think you played 3 cards on turn 2. So if you played 3 cards on turn 2, you have 1 card left. And you just gave them a card because you hit them for 5. And if you triggered a prophecy, you basically lost the game. So these are the kind of reasons why Monk sometimes. I mean, Monk is a cool class, has style points, but if you empty your hand on turn 2, you got these two 5/5s, 5 attack creatures. You ran out of cards, so you don't have any more cards to actually play anymore. And this is the best case. This is best case scenario. You got the combo in your deck, and you had Ring of Magicka, which is something you can't control. You don't always get the ring, and you don't always get your combo. But when you do get the ring and you do get the combo, you're hitting and breaking a rune your very first attack, and you're out of cards. So if you break the rune and you get a prophecy, you can almost be guaranteed to lose. Almost. If their deck is any good. And I guess that's a little uncomfortable place to be, is I break a rune, I lose the game. So, Dominion Oathman, High Elf, 2/2, 1 cost. Summon. If you have a willpower creature in play, get Drain. Intelligence card in play, deal 2 damage to your opponent. This card is an all-star. It's the best card we've probably seen so far in green. Yeah, it's probably the best card in green. It's actually better than Bandari Opportunist. So do not be fooled. First of all, people play 2 Magicka to get a 3/2, and they call that great. Or a 2/3. Barrow Stalker is one of the best 2-drops in purple, in the game. 3/2 guy who heals you. Bruma Profiteer, one of the best 2-drops in the game. This guy has stats that are comparable to it. 2/2 is comparable to 3/2 at half the price for 1, because 1 is half of 2. Okay, and then so it's already playable as a 1-cost 2/2 constructed in Arena, and then it has the upside of triggering not 1 but 2 effects, and both effects are good. First of all, people play 3 Magicka for Golden Initiate, 3/3 Drain, and they call that great. So this is basically a mini Golden Initiate if you have a willpower creature in play. At 1/3 the cost, but at 2/3 of the power. So from a pound for pound, Dominion Oathman is better than a Golden Initiate. Like that's John Jones, and this is like Demetrius Johnson. It's like this is the flyweight version. But then it can even be better than the Golden Initiate when it triggers the blue, because people like Golden Initiate when Golden Initiate gets a single attack off. It's like if Golden Initiate so the perfect use case of Golden Initiate is not one that it lives. The dream of Golden Initiate is they attack you, they're aggro deck, they break a rune, he comes out for free, you can put him wherever you want, usually right in front of the enemy attacker, and then on your turn, you can trade into that card and get 3 life. And if you analyze that situation, it's a lot more than just gaining 3 life. It can be something like gaining 10 life. So in that situation, it's possible that your Golden Initiate performed the function of gaining 10 life. Let's see how that works out. So let's say they have a Circle Initiate who's a 4/3. That's the thing that attacked you, broke the rune, and got Golden Initiate to come out for free in the first place. So first thing you should think is, don't say, oh, Golden Initiate has Drain, very important, let's put him in the opposite lane so he could live. No, you put him in the same lane as Circle Initiate, because when you attack, you gain 3 life. Those first 3 gain life, right? When you kill that Circle Initiate, you're taking off 4 damage off the board from its next attack. So the thing is, you can view this as a 10 health gain, because first of all, you gained 3 life. You took off 4 life from the attack, and that 3 life gained can be viewed. It doesn't have to be viewed this way, but it can be viewed as he needs to come up with 3 more damage to kill me. So you could say it's 7 or 10, but it depends on how you think about it, because let's pretend was able to get additional attacks in. It could be easily more than 10, because let's pretend it could even be 11 if you think, let's say that didn't happen and he was able to protect his werewolf. His werewolf was going to get another attack in. So I'm not just adding it up. I'm saying on average. So like if the Golden Initiate gets you 3 life, you add 3 life, then he takes off the 4 damage from the wolf immediately. And then on top of that, he takes off the damage the wolf would have done to you later on. So if that was represented into a second attack, like by killing the initiate will never get a second attack, which is basically 4 more damage taken off the board. So you're kind of taking away phantom damage. So like Golden Initiate, the reason why top players love Golden Initiate so much is because one little trade like that is representing 11 life total swing. And that's not unheard of, because usually if you didn't have an answer to the Circle Initiate really will get a second attack in, right? And the thing is, that's the best case scenario of a Golden Initiate. People are more than okay with the not best case scenario of a Golden Initiate. They're okay with playing Golden Initiate from the hand in front of the werewolf. So like if they have a 4/3 werewolf hitting me, and usually this is only true if they think this is not Crusader and this is not Wardcrafter colors, because the problem with Crusader is they can use Crusader's Assault, so they can trade into you, and if they have blue, then they can use Ward on top of the werewolf, and the werewolf will kill the Golden Initiate, and then now you just feels bad. But there are a lot of situations where people will put, like let's say they're against Warrior, they'll put the Golden Initiate straight in front of the werewolf to feed. They'll actually put it there to basically say, look, trade into me, or I'm going to trade into you, and that still feels good, because while that may not represent the 11 life total swing from a prophecy trigger, it does at least represent 7. It represents 3 from the potential drain, or 4. Like you could say between 4 to 7, because if they trade into the... So you're putting in a situation where you're saying, look, I put the Golden Initiate in front of your Circle Initiate. You will either give me 4 life, or you'll give me 7. Because if they put the wolf attacks the Golden Initiate, the wolf dies, and the drain never triggers. So it takes off 4 damage from your face. But if they attack your face, well, they did 4. And then you will attack, you drain back, you gain 3. So you're taking off 4 damage from their next attack, you're gaining 3 life. So that's 7 minus 4. So you still come back at 3. You still come back at 3 net gain, which is crazy. 3 net gain. 3, 4, 4. Yeah, it's a 3 net gain. So even though on that immediate turn, they dealt 1 more damage because 4 attack is more than 3 drain, you would actually have... You should view it as I'm stopping their next attack, right? So that's why it's worth saying, hey, 3, 4, 5. It's 5, I believe, because you have 3 drain, 4 attack, so they got 1 damage in, but you stop their next attack for 4. So 4 minus 1, okay, 3, not 5. So you can get 3 you can get on average a net gain of 3 when you factor in the werewolf's next attack. So the reason why I'm kind of talking about this is the Dominion Oathman is 2/3 as good as a Golden Initiate and 1/3 the price. And that makes Dominion Oathman an all-star, because Golden Initiate is an all-star not only when played from a prophecy, but when played from hand for the first willpower trigger. For the second trigger, that's when this card is better than a Golden Initiate, because not just pound for pound, but I think objectively, this card is objectively better than a Golden Initiate when both of them trigger. The reason is, when you deal 2 damage to your opponent, you get the drain ability if you have drain. So you gain 2 life automatically. You just play a 1 cost, gain 2 life, deal 2 damage. And that's pretty crazy when you think about Ice Spike is 2 Magicka cost, deal 2 damage to the face. There's a couple cards that are like gain 2 life. I think that's 1 Magicka cost. So you're like, so you could even think of it as that's a Black Hand Messenger, because Black Hand Messenger is a 3 cost card, deal 2 damage, gain 2 life. So that's a Black Hand Messenger in the blue part. On the yellow part, it's a Golden Initiate. And that's so basically played without ever getting a single attack in. This is a very cheap Black Hand Messenger when you trigger it. But if it gets additional attacks in, it adds more value than a Black Hand Messenger and a Golden Initiate. So this Oathman might actually be like, is this the best Oathman? Like Guildsworn Oathman. So Guildsworn Oathman's really good. Dominion Oathman is super good. Like this card's so good. It's so good because it's good even if you don't even trigger any of it. Like there are people who are playing this card, I believe, and they're monk or they're assassin. So like it's possible to play this card and just feel really good about it, and you don't even need half of the ability. So in a deck that's very aggressive and just wants to deal damage to the face, it has the same ability as the 3-drop 4/2 deal 2 damage to their face. Now, granted, this card does have a conditional factor, and it's basically Dominion Oathman can't be played or shouldn't be played on an empty board. Like, you don't play this turn 1. This is not the turn 1 1-drop. Although you could do that. It's fine. It's usually the turn 3, turn 4 curve out play. So this is a card that you play in addition to other cards, or after other cards have been played, when you have extra Magicka left over. And that's really cool. I think this card could be nerfed to a 1/2 and still be playable, because the blue part's super relevant already. Because like the blue part of dealing 2 and then dealing, it's like this card is objectively better than Ebonheart Pact Oathman, because Ebonheart Pact Oathman's a 1/3 for like 2 Magicka. This is a 2/2 for 1. So I talked quite a bit, and I was kind of like doing some math on Oathman. Hopefully that didn't kill people. If you have any questions, just let me know. I think the thing about Dominion Oathman is and Golden Initiate is to recognize not only the drain they give you, but also the damage they take off the board, and also sort of the compounding effects of having taken like the phantom damage of that creature being dead, the theoretical Circle Initiate, and on top of it, I didn't really even talk about the upside, the phantom effect or the compounding effect of Dominion Oathman actually sticking. Because if Dominion Oathman or Golden Initiate stick against aggro decks, the game's over. Like if those things drain more than twice, they can single-handedly win the game. And that's actually funny, because these cards, you don't think of 1-drops as win conditions generally, but a 1-drop that has drain is a win condition when you're against aggro decks, because aggro decks are trying to empty their hand out and just spike you down. They're trying to spike you down, take out 30 life. So seeing a Dominion Oathman played alongside a Golden Initiate can almost spell instant loss to an aggro player. And to make it even more, to even just give a better example, or like to talk about like a use case of this, is aggressive decks are running Dominion Oathman to beat other aggressive decks. So it's a mirror breaker. Like if you're playing a Covenant aggro like I am, or Ebonheart aggro, Ebonheart could have access to this card, but we couldn't trigger any of them. So Ebonheart could play it because it's green, but we can't trigger willpower or intelligence. Covenant can't play it because they don't have access to green. So this is literally the opposite faction's colors. So this card's good enough to be played in Empire of Cyrodiil, even though it just gets drained, or in Dominion, where it's the All-Star, because it triggers all of its abilities pretty easily. And then you can play it in aggressive lists, and it can beat aggressive decks as an aggressive. So this is an aggressive card that can beat aggressive decks. not weak aggressive decks, strong aggressive decks. We're talking decks stacked with Sowers of Revenge. Dominion Oathman really, really can make it not... Okay, those games are really tight. They're very close. So like Warrior versus Dominion, for example, they're very close. If Dominion gets no drain off, I think Warrior is favored. But Dominion has access to so many drains that the drain becomes the competitive advantage Dominion aggro has over other classes, because they can see drain in the monk colors of green and yellow. Basically, those are reliable sources of a drain. Like with Monk Strike, what Gumchu was sharing with me his list for both Empire of Cyrodiil and Dominion aggro, and he was running Monk Strike 2 in one of the decks and 1 in the other deck. And the reason is because it's such a huge tempo swing. Like in the aggro mirror, it's game breaking. And I can see that because I am running a single copy of Snaketooth Necklace, and Snaketooth Necklace has consistently, I might even put a second one. It's consistent. Like if I want to hate on aggro decks in tomorrow's tournament, I should put a second Snaketooth Necklace, because Snaketooth Necklace is kind of a crappier Monk Strike. It's a crappier Monk Strike, okay? It has been game deciding, and it's been the card I'm praying for in aggro mirrors in general. Like usually it's like, oh, I'm not against aggro, I don't want to see Snaketooth Necklace. Oh shoot, I'm against aggro, I really want to see Snaketooth Necklace. It's like the card I want to see more than anything, because the game is getting so tight, and any amount of heal can be the difference. Like just even 2 to 3 points of healing can push you that much closer to victory and push you out of range of death. So definitely, if you're playing Dominion, if you're struggling with aggro decks, if you're struggling against aggro decks and you want to beat aggro decks and you're using Monk, use this card. If you're playing Assassin and you're trying to just burn people down to death and you don't even care, I'm not talking about Market Assassin, but you're talking about like a creature-based Assassin list, you don't even care about drain, Dominion Oathman, let's go. Inspiring Soldier. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please let me know. We've been spending a lot of time on each individual card because, honestly, it's kind of fun. Inspiring Soldier, Dark Elf, 3/2, veteran, summon a 1/1 recruit. I should say, Dominion Oathman is an all-star. Dominion Oathman is definitely an all-star in Versus Arena. It's an all-star in Constructed and in Versus Arena. And that's, you need to recognize there are cards that are all-stars in Constructed that are not all-stars in Versus Arena because they're too difficult to center. They need too many combo pieces. Like, for example, Ebonheart Forerunner is way better in Constructed than Versus Arena, for the very simple fact that you can put 3 of them at will in your deck, and you need more copies of it to be effective. Dominion Oathman, though, if you were drafting Oathman colors, you basically already have these colors. So setting this up is so easy. And even if you don't set it up, it's still good. That's why it's such a fantastic card. I was reminded because Inspiring Soldier is a threatening card. This card has, okay, so when you are paying 2 Magicka, 3/2 and 2/3 is competitive. Like that's when you're saying that's playable, good and playable. Bruma Profiteer, 3/2, playable. Not playable. It's like one of the best 2-drops. Barrowstalker, 2/3, guard, drain, one of the best cards. So when you have 2-drops. So the way you should think about 2-drops is you're actually thinking of them as competing for a slot. Think of it as you're running a company, there's multiple people going for the same job, or you've got something like, it's a sports team. You're the coach for the Warriors, Golden State Warriors, and you can only field 5 guys. So you have limited slots, and you can choose who am I going to put on point guard, who am I going to put on post. The 2-drop slot is basically the same thing. The 2-drop slot is a competitive world where there are so many good 2-drops who all are trying to be the 2-drops in your deck. Inspiring Soldiers like, put me in, coach, put me in. Like, I'm ready, I'm ready. Like, he's trying to get the spot. And you should view it as that employer in a very sort of, the ball's on your court. You can say, are you hired or are you fired? Or like, are you hired or we're going to pass on you. We're going to choose another candidate. Inspiring Soldier is one such candidate that should go through a review process where you compare him to the other things on the market. So if you had access to purple, you need to compare him to Barrow Stalker. If you have access to willpower, you need to compare him to Bruma Profiteer. So because he has the exact same stats as Bruma Profiteer, 3-2, the only thing you're comparing is his ability. Veteran, Summon, a 1-run recruit to Bruma Profiteer. And right off the bat, we know Inspiring Soldier is worse than Bruma Profiteer in the majority of cases. And this is generally the case. Inspiring Soldier is actually better than Bruma Profiteer, and it's actually better than Barrow Stalker in certain cases. Now you need to ask yourself, in those cases it's actually better than those two cards. Are those the situations that are coming up more often? So, for example, compare this to Barrow Stalker. Barrow Stalker is better when you need a guard, because he has guard. Barrow Stalker is better when you need Drain, like, because he has Drain. This is very simple. The Inspiring Soldier neither has guard nor Drain, so when you need a guard or Drain, he's worse. Compare him to Bruma Profiteer. Bruma Profiteer is about life gain. You gain 1 life for every creature that you play. So if you don't care about gaining life, Inspiring Soldier is already better than Bruma Profiteer. Like, hands down, if your just deck doesn't care about gaining life at all, and there are lots of decks that do not care about gaining life. There are even many aggressive lists. So the way you view it from an aggressive standpoint is you view life as a resource. You want to use your life to help you win. You don't want your life to be high when you win. You want your life to be more than 1 when you win. So if your life is 1, greater than or equal to 1 when you win, that's all you need. You should not feel bad if you win at 1 health. You should feel like all that life, I traded it for cards. I basically went to the store and said, I'll give you 29 life, give me 5 cards. I traded all my traded all my life for runes. And a lot of decks would love to make that trade if they could make that trade. And part of the skill in Elder Scrolls Legends is to trick people into giving you what you want without them knowing that that's what you want. So like, let's say you were a player who is willing to trade 29 life for 5 cards. Your opponent doesn't know that because when they queue into you on ladder, they don't know what's in your deck. So you may want to trick them. You may want to make them think that, hey, now is a good time to break runes because, you know, my life is very, very precious. But really, deep, deep down, you're like, please hit me because I want more cards. This is the case for a lot of decks that don't have a lot of card draw. Like, decks that don't have a lot of card draw would fall under the category of maybe not trading all 29 life, but towards that direction of saying, let's trade as much life as possible for more cards because I cannot draw enough cards. So those decks are the kind of decks that want Inspiring Soldier over Bruma Profiteer because they just didn't care about life in the first place. That makes Inspiring Soldier not necessarily the better aggressive pick. So if we look at Inspiring Soldier and Bruma Profiteer is still probably better if you're trying to be aggressive. The reason is Bruma Profiteer's life gain is really relevant in the aggro-aggro mirror. But it's not relevant against control. That's the thing. So it's better for an aggressive deck that is facing an aggressive deck, but it's worse for an aggressive deck that's facing a control deck. Inspiring Soldier is a better aggressive card facing aggressive decks, but it's worse against control because when I say control, I'm saying these decks do not attack you. They're not attacking you until they can kill you in 1 or 2 turns, at which point no amount of life gain would have even mattered. That being said, Inspiring Soldier, so that's a framework to look at 2-drops. I feel like Inspiring Soldier, like, first of all, he would be like way better if it was Pilfer. If this was Pilfer, Summon, a 1/1 Recruit, he's better than Veteran. Because Veteran means you can only trigger it once. It would be better if it was Expertise, because Expertise means it can trigger multiple times. Potentially better, because Expertise might be too difficult to trigger in green, because green doesn't run an awful lot of items, and it does have actions, but not exactly the actions an aggressive deck would be running. It might be more creature heavy. So Expertise might be not as good, because Expertise is basically if you played additional cards, right? Veteran is like, look, you can get this value, just get 1 attack and survive. But that being said, getting the Veteran off probably means you need to hit them in the face, because the 2 toughness means it's not going to trigger Veteran very easily. And as for Pilfer, Empire Recruiter has that role. 2/3, 2-drop, Pilfer, summon a 1/1 recruit. And in this situation, I think it's really hard to say Inspiring Soldier is actually better than Empire Recruiter. Because if you compare them, because they're both 2-drops, 2/3, so the whole point is they both can get you recruits, but the upside of the Empire Recruiter is he can give you an unlimited number of recruits, versus this guy can give you only 1. Okay, this guy's survival is not as good. 2 toughness is pretty weak, so he can't expect to trade into very many things. 2/3 is it's fair enough. He could trade into something and survive. He's a little bit less aggressive, but he also has a higher power level because he's a tricolor called Empire, purple, yellow, green. So Inspiring Soldier is, by design, going to be weaker than the Empire Recruiter. So this kind of goes back to our 2-drop discussion. Is Inspiring Soldier a better 2-drop than those other 2-drops that want to be in your deck? I feel like if you're in Empire colors, Empire Recruiter is for sure better, and that there's a world where you want both Inspiring Soldier if you're able to make the token strategy work. And I think the token strategy is most powerful in a green willpower Empire deck, because Empire Oathman is the best card that synergizes with these tokens. Give all creatures +1/+1. One second. That's surprising. Yeah, so I do like the art as well. The art's cool. Shiny sword. Oh, isn't this cute? He's a dark elf protecting humans. We could all live in harmony and kumbaya. Yeah, I didn't do a really good job talking about art because, like, honestly, we're already an hour and a half in, and I'm like just talking about gameplay design. And art is cool because art would be a totally new way to talk about cards, because I love, like, card art makes these games even playable. So it's hard to see this card played in lieu of other 2-drops for non-token strategy. So if you're running a non-token strategy, this card doesn't scream I'm better than I'm not. He's only conditionally better, and that's when you can make good use of the token, the 1/1. Empire Oathman is a very good card, and so is Empire Recruiter, that when you play them with recruits, those 1-run recruits suddenly start becoming very, very threatening. And since we're not living in an Ice Storm meta, I keep saying this, these cards actually become somewhat playable, because Ice Storm meta means all these cards are not playable. Ice Storm would just completely smash all these token-based strategies. I mean, Divine Fervor helps, but these tokens, their stat line being 1/1. I mean, 2 Divine Fervors, they're still in Ice Storm range, right? So like, how can you get two Divine Fervors online before their first Ice Storm? Thankfully, for the Empire, Ice Storm is not dealing effectively with other aggro decks such as Covenant, so that like, if you wonder why are people playing these Crusader Rage lists, why are people playing Slay Rage, why are people playing a lot of these, Tribunal and Telvanni still are Ice Storm based decks, okay? But being 75 card lists, they don't rely on it. Like Conscription Telvanni right now, as far as I can tell, they're actually not depending on Ice Storm to save them from Halalu. They're depending on their 2-drops because of Tullius's Conscription. So the philosophy is, I'm going to use a bunch of Bruma Profiteers, I'm going to use a lot of Barrow Stalkers, and I'm just going to throw 2/2s in front of them, and we're just going to slow them down so we can get to the magic account where we can just close them out. Ice Storm being a sort of, sometimes good, sometimes bad. It's sometimes bad because it's unplayable against Witherhand Cultist decks. It's a dead card against control decks. It's a dead card a lot of the times against control decks, not all the time. It's not particularly amazing against Slay, because like Slay can continually resurrect its creatures back over and over and over again, and it has insane card draw. Because like Ice Storm shines the most when you're against decks that run out of gas. They play their cards, they have a wide board, you Ice Storm them, and they concede. That's how Ice Storm's favorite game plays out. But in a world where Witherhand Cultists are coming down, Ice Storm is not able to, first of all, it can't even kill the Witherhand Cultist, and it can't be played to remove other threats, and half those threats, especially in the Covenant, are warded, and half those other threats, they are like jagged stat lines. They're things like haunted spirit, so when they die, they're buffing other creatures. They're things like pit lines. They're 5/5, 3 cost. So Ice Storm is not seen as the answer right now to many decks. So token-based strategies vulnerable to Ice Storm have a chance to sneak in. Right? That's like Empire doesn't have Witherhand Cultists, so they can't protect themselves directly using cards that counter Ice Storm, but they can sort of take advantage of the fact that Ice Storm itself is not particularly the most popular card. Now, we are in a Slay meta, and we are in an Unstoppable Rage meta. Oh. Because of Taskmaster? The Taskmaster? The Mortal Taskmaster for the charge? Other things about this token-based strategy is... I lost my train of thought. Hold on. Okay, so what? There was something about this card that I was thinking, but Gumshoe, I think, has talked about how to give this card charge. With Taskmaster, you can give him charge. There's a Mournhold Taskmaster in Ebonheart colors that say, give all veteran creatures charge. At which point, this guy becomes a charging 2-cost, 3/2. That's a great way to get more value. Mournhold Taskmaster... And maybe I should experiment with that, because Mournhold Taskmaster, to me, is a very good card that will become exponentially better as more veteran creatures are released. And right now, cards with veteran are super good in Arena, but they're pretty lackluster. They're lackluster, in my opinion, in Constructed, because they have a tendency to be a little bit... There's a couple good veteran cards, but some of these veteran cards cost too much magicka, and actually getting off that one attack is a little difficult for some of them. They're not the most magic efficient cards because theoretically half of their value is baked into veteran. So they need that veteran to trigger to get value, and veteran usually has some good ability attached to it. But if they don't get veteran, if they don't pull off veteran, it becomes a real problem. But Mournhold Taskmaster might be a good answer to that because Mournhold Taskmaster can actually give everyone charge. I think there's one more thing to say about this card, but don't remember what it was. So this card's playable. Just be careful that when you're playing this card, it probably shines the most in a super aggressive token list, and that there are better options for decks that do not take advantage of tokens. So if you run this card in a deck and you're not really getting value out of the 1/1, so if you're not pumping the 1/1's value up, there are probably better 2-drops available to you. Because it's stacked. The two drop area is stacked. And for those of you who do not play Tellius's Conscription yet, maybe you don't have the card or you haven't given it a try, how it works is Tellius's Conscription pulls out 8 2-drops. Maximum 8 if you have empty board. And so people who run Tellius's Conscriptions are very deep thinkers about what 8 2-drops they even put in their deck. So they could be 1-drops because Tellius Conscription can pull out 1-drops as well, like Ungulum and his assassins, Dark Brotherhood assassins. So in that space, if you're not sure what 2-drops you should be running, you usually want to pair the right 2-drops with each other to have a cohesive strategy in those conscription decks. But if you look carefully at competitive players' Tellius Conscriptions decks, or you ask around on the Discord channel, you'll find which are the best 2-drops for what, and then you ask yourself, is this the best 2-drop for what I want it in my deck for? Because chances are there's a 2-drop that does what you want it to do better than any other 2-drop, and you might not be aware of that 2-drop yet. So this guy is another, Inspiring Soldier is another card. It's just one of so many that you can constantly think, is this the best choice? 3-cost Dragon Guard Outcast, 1/3. Lethal summon Dragon Guard Outcast, gains cover until she attacks. Fairly annoying card to face in versus arena because it pins down a lane. So you could play this card at 3 cost in field lane, and basically she just sits there waiting for a high value target to kill. I think she's draftable. I like lethal creatures in Constructed. Is she better than Old Velothi Assassin? I don't think so. I would compare her to Old Velothi Assassin because Old Velothi Assassin's a great card, and I do not even run 3 of them. So it's a great card in Constructed that even when I do have it, I am struggling to even justify more than 2 slots in many decks. I think one of my Slay decks has 3, and that's more of I need earlier answers to people because it's probably one of the cheapest lethal creatures. So I usually, in the Slay deck, I would use Unstoppable Rage on a 2-drop on turn 10, or with 10 Magicka. It doesn't need to be turn 10 if we ramped into it, because sometimes it's emergency Unstoppable Rage. And that's a good time to have 2-drop lethal creatures like Fighters Guild Recruits and Old Velothi Assassin. So in Constructed, I don't expect to see Dragon Guard Outcast played because Old Velothi Assassin is much better, in my opinion. It's cheaper. Magicka cost is cheaper. Attack is the exact same. The toughness is a little bit off, but rally is not something to laugh at. Like, rally Rally makes Old Velothi Assassin a creature your opponent has to answer. Like your opponent is forced to do something about it. And sometimes it makes them do things that are very unfavorable trades, like lightning bolt, crushing blow. Like if they use a lightning bolt on Old Velothi Assassin, you're winning because they spent twice as much magicka to deal with a 2-cost card. If they use crushing blow, they used 50% more magicka, so you're also winning. So like some of the cleanest answers to Old Velothi Assassin just feel bad. I mean, there's an Old Velothi Assassin in the shadow lane. You throw down a guard. I know I'm saying his name wrong. I'm not saying Ald. I'm saying Old because Charmer says Old Velothi, and I think Old Velothi sounds more cool. So the Old Assassin is just so much better because it is applying pressure in a way that Dragon Guard Outcast doesn't. Because Dragon Guard Outcast doesn't scream, answer me. It screams, please run away. Like, if a person plays Dragon Guard Outcast in a lane, I don't expect anybody to play anything in that lane for a while. Okay? It's coming out slower on curve, so it's not as... It's not easier. It's not going to combo well with Archer's Gambit as well as, say, your Old Velothi, because Old Velothi, Archer's Gambit is a saving play for a lot of these Slay decks, especially because Witherhand Cultist is a consistent threat we see. So using a 2-cost with what adds, I don't know how many, is it 3 Magicka? What is a Cultist? I don't even have a Cultist yet. 2. So Cultist adds 2. So if you have an Old Velothi's Assassin on turn 2, you can't. If you don't have Ring of Magicka, you have to wait till turn 4 to use the Archer's Gambit. And that's an example of the tools that are slowing down Archer's Gambit will slow you down even more in a world where you're running Dragon Guard Outcast, because Dragon Guard Outcast costs more. So you're basically, your plays are slowing down. You have to develop the Dragon Guard Outcast. It's slowing down the Archer's Gambit, which becomes a problem in a world full of Witherhand Cultists, right? So my judgment on this card is objectively worse than Old Velothi Assassin, because Old Velothi Assassin is cheaper, creates pressure immediately, not only can be comboed off with Archer's Gambit more easily, Unstoppable Rage more easily, Crossbow more easily. So for the Slay decks, it can combo off more easily. It demands an answer because of Rally, because Rally is a very powerful keyword, especially for such an early drop that can be played on turn 1. Dragon Guard Outcast puts you in a funny situation where he's kind of like a pseudo guard, but he actually pushes your opponent into a different lane. Like Old Velothi Assassin actually does the opposite. People do not ignore the Old Velothi Assassin lane. Like, one of the most efficient ways to answer Old Velothi Assassin is to put a 2-drop into front of Old Velothi Assassin to kill it. Dragon Guard Outcast is a card that, because it doesn't have Rally, does not actually create any pressure on its own. So his ability gains cover until she attacks is almost a curse, because she actually might stay in that cover for a long period of time. So how do we use her? So we've got her out of the way, why she's not constructed playable. How do we use her in a arena deck? So I think she's arena playable, and I think she's good in arena. Is she an all-star like Dominion Oathman? No, she's definitely not an all-star. But she's definitely a powerful card. The reason why she's a powerful card is because she can lock, like the very reason why she's bad in constructed, she locks down a lane and pushes people away, is exactly why she's good in arena. Because what ends up happening in arena a lot is you have these base races, and let's say you put her. Let's say, okay, we'll do 2 situations. One situation, you put her in a lane where there's no creatures. So if you put her in a lane where there's no creatures, your opponent starts putting people in the other lane. What ends up happening is you get full control of that lane, and eventually their overflow will go into that lane. Like, eventually, they can only have 4 creatures in a lane at any given time, and let's say they have bad creatures in that lane. let's say they overflow. Like let's say okay, they have bad creatures in one lane. So you put Dragon Guard Outcast in an empty field lane. All their good creatures subsequently going forward would have to go in front of Dragon Guard Outcast or be a sacrificed creature. Like they would have to sacrifice their own creature to play it into a lane just to avoid Dragon Guard Outcast, which is unlikely because in Versus Arena you have such a limited card draw that if they are sacrificing their own creatures like that, they're so scared of Dragon Guard Outcast, they're probably going to lose the game. So the thing is, if they stacked their one lane that they're in control of and they start overflowing into their more powerful threats into Dragon Guard Outcast, that's when Dragon Guard Outcast gets the most value, right? Because Dragon Guard Outcast would then trade up, and that's what you want to use her for. Like perfect world is she trades into a 2 attack, and then she trades into so she can take out 2 people, 2 attack, and then a much larger creature, a Swamp Leviathan 8/8, take her out, right? And that's why Dragon Guard Outcast can be a good card, is because there are good targets to take out, and she could force kind of awkward laning by your opponent. And this doesn't come into play in Constructed that much because in Constructed, these lane overflowing doesn't usually happen as much. It does happen, but against Control it can't happen because cards are getting removed left and right. Against aggro, there are a lot of trades going on. So dodging and then lane overflow does happen, but that's probably not the majority of cases. So she's good at forcing people into an awkward situation. But her attack is not aggressive enough to really put pressure. Again, she can't put pressure. She's kind of a proactive, reactive card. She's proactive in the sense that you play her. When you play her, she locks down a lane. And she's reactive in the sense that although she locks down a lane, she doesn't really do enough pressure. She doesn't do enough damage to make people respond to her. So she's kind of reacting to whatever your opponent does. So she's kind of like that half-half where she's kind of proactive, kind of reactive. So pick her up if you're in need of a card that will, especially if you're in a deck that is more defensive oriented. Like if you're, I mean, you need to be willing to beat down your opponent in arena, but if your deck is basically say, look, I'm going to build up a board and we're going to slow things down a little bit, Dragon Guard Outcast is in that direction. Because if you wanted to be on a more aggressive plan, it would be more advisable to have a much more aggressive statted creature that could at least apply pressure. Because the worst case scenario is it's turn 3, and well, it's actually a good scenario. Like if you have a Dragon Guard Outcast, and like let's say their turn 2 play is a 2 attack creature, that's when Dragon Guard Outcast probably shines the most. They play a 2 attack creature, you put Dragon Guard Outcast in front of them, and then you trade in, and then you survive. Another way to do this, I mean, I had this card in my Monk deck, which I went 7-0 in Versus Arena, is to use Shining Saints and Cloud Rest Illusionist in conjunction with this, because that's where there's a lot of synergy. Because not only do you have that lockdown effect, you can actually basically say, look, I can give Dragon Guard Outcast 7 toughness artificially by using Cloud Rest Illusionist, so we could basically put him aggressively in front of a strong creature, and then we have combat tricks. We use calm, -4, -0. Those are ways to squeeze more value out of Dragon Guard Outcast. And again, even in Constructed, but especially in Arena, that's how you should view some of these cards, is not just what am I paying for magical-wise, but how can I actually squeeze out the most value out of this card? Like, if I have this card in my deck, and if I'm playing it, how can I get the most? And Cloud Rest Illusionist and Calm will basically bring this card into a whole nother level of where what we just talked about, it's going to do even more than that. Because then it not only does it trade up, it can do an unexpected trade up. It can start trading down. Like it can survive 3 trades with the presence of Cloud Rest Illusionist and Calm. And if this thing even survives 2 trades, it's paid itself, and it's probably you're winning the game. If it survived 3 trades, this is like a MVP, Kobe Bryant, Dragon Guard Outcast, Weech. Because we talked about art, I like her ninja / Roman Empire black armor with 2 samurai swords? 2 samurai swords? So the question is this poor fella going to die by her? Or is that her boss? Is that her coach? Is that her target? Because if that's her target, it's a little awkward because he's walking by and he definitely sees her holding swords. Wow, we have so many cards to go through and we're like going so slow. Oh well. Dunmore Tyro. 3 cost, 1/4, charge, veteran, +2/+0. I honestly thought this card was bad. But Gumshoe basically puts 3 of these, 2 to 3 in his decks. And I think that was pretty eye-opening because when I got my butt kicked by this card, who's doing like a Taekwondo kick, Dunmore Tyro is actually quite good. First of all, the thing is, okay, the reason, okay, 1/4 isn't the most glamorous thing when you attack face, but it is enough in a lot of situations. So what ends up happening is, if you use Dunmore Tyro to trade into a creature that has 1 attack left and has 1 health toughness left and 3 attack, that's Dunmore Tyro's best line. You run Dunmore Tyro into an almost dead creature, and then Dunmore Tyro's, he doesn't lose any attack because that 1 attack is efficiently applied, removes a threat, and then his next turns, he basically becomes a monster. Like 3/4 for 3 is very reasonable. Especially if you used him as a pseudo removal spell where he removed a guy. There'd be a really cool card if there was a card that said, all creatures with veteran recharge their veteran ability. So it's basically like you got 3/4, and then later on, he's with this recharge ability, he becomes a level 2 veteran. He's now a 5/4. That would be cool if there was a card like that. Dunmore Tyro is a card I need to experiment with more. Maybe I should even consider replacing some of my Ebonheart charge creatures. I'm running the Orc dude who's 2/3 charge. And 2/3 is like way worse than 3/4. And sometimes I'm actually trading my 2/3 into 1 toughness creatures. And I actually run so many items, steel scimitars, cloaks, and daggers, where a 3/1/4 might actually be able to use the steel scimitar and those daggers more effectively. In Arena, I highly suggest this card. This card is aggressive. It's reactive. It can remove threats off the board, and it causes pressure. It's a very reasonably statted creature. 3/4 for 3. I think this card is easy to get maximum value out of, and that's something maybe that goes back to Dragon Guard Outcast. Dragon Guard Outcast can be a beast of a card if the stars line up and if you play well, and if your opponent misplays. So these things add up. Your opponent misplays, you play well, and the stars line up. Those things can make Dragon Guard Outcast punch far above its weight. The problem is, for those things to happen, it's a tall order. Dunmore Tyro is a card that is a lot easier to get the value out of. They're both costing the same. They're both 3-cost creatures. So from a constructed point of view, you need to compare Dragon Guard Outcast to a Dunmore Tyro, right? And we already compared Dragon Guard Outcast to Old Velothi, and Old Velothi won hands down in my book. And Old Velothi is a 2-cost, so that's bad. When you're worse than a card that costs less than you, that's not good. Dunmore Tyro is a 3-cost card, and it could end up removing the same kind of card Dragon Guard Outcast wants to remove, but a turn sooner, right? Because what if you use Dragon Guard Outcast and you're using the lethal ability to take down a 5/1? Well, Dunmore Tyro would have done the same thing, except for Dragon Guard Outcast would mean you take another 5 damage to the face. Dunmore Tyro stops that damage immediately. You sacrifice him, but you're stopping 5 damage to the face. Another situation is, hey, Dragon Guard Outcast taking out a 1 toughness creature with 2 attack, and they survive the trade. Well, Dunmer Tyro does the same thing, but also prevents that damage and provides a new threat. And he can trade up all the way to a 3 attack creature with 1 toughness. When it comes to items love charge creatures. So items will be easier to get full value from a Dunmer Tyro than a Dragon Guard Outcast. You can use those items to trade, or you can use those items to go face. We should note that he's actually playable in Empire, he's playable in Ebonheart, and he's playable in Dominion. So this card can basically be in 3 out of 5 classes. He's not in Covenant and he's not in Guildsworn, but he's playable in 3 of the new classes. Shadow Scale Hunter. 3 cost, 4/3 move. I've actually found this card to be quite good in Arena. I've not tried to put him in a movement deck because I don't have a Nasi basically. But in a monk-based Anasi deck, maybe Shadow Scale Hunter, maybe it has a place. 4/3 for 3 is good stats already. The move ability, I think, is a very interesting. It's not a good ability in itself, but you can do cool things with it. So you trade into a 2 attack creature, you survive, and you run away from a 1 attack. Like let's say they have a 2 attack creature and a 1 attack creature in front of it. You use Shadow Scale Hunter, kill the 2 attack creature in the field lane, and you flee to the shadow lane. And now your opponent has to chase him, and he can get damage in. And let's say they put a 3 attack creature to respond to Shadow Scale Hunter, and then you throw down a guard, the 2/8 guard, right? Well, that actually happens in my monk deck for Verse Arena. And that's the thing, like, this card can cause problems. He himself can cause problems. His stats are good. He can cause problems, and it's easy to make his problems compound by, like, if you put guards in front of him now, it's like, man, they might think like, man, when can I get this Shadow Scale Hunter off the board? So it's possible to get 2 or even 3 attacks off of him, and his ability basically makes it easier to get his attack off. What you definitely aren't hoping to do is you're hoping that you have control of the field lane, and then you use him in the field lane, and then he runs to the shadow lane. But that's obviously relative to the board state, because if you don't have the ability to put him in shadow lane, like field lane, he instantly dies, put him in the shadow lane, right? And then let's say you put him in the shadow lane, prepare your next turn to see him go into the field lane. So that means you put him in the shadow lane, maybe you want him to chase, and then you get Shadow Scale Hunter to connect the attack, and then you start putting your guards and other creatures into the field lane. Overall, if he gets 1 attack off and then he trades, that's good enough value. Like, that's all you need from him. Very simple. Get 1 attack in, trade into a creature with 4 toughness. If you can get anything more than that, you're really squeezing optimal value out of him. For constructed play, it's hard for me to say he's better than a movement it's hard for me to say he's actually a good card, because he's playable, but outside of movement, move is not that powerful. And like, let's say you use the move ability and you're against a guy with Reverberating Strike. Does Reverberating Strike care whether you moved or not? No. So I think another card would, or even in constructed, it's like you moved and then it's turn 4 and they use Ring of Magicka and they put Phalanx Exemplar 5/6 in front of him. So like in constructed, if they didn't have ways to deal with him by just straight burning him to death, they definitely have guards that are pretty hard for this guy to get through. So there are better 3-drops that can apply much pressure. The one that comes to mind is Ebonheart Forerunner. Ebonheart Forerunner is, to me, one of my favorite 3-drops. It's like, it really can give Young Mammoth a run for its money, because it can draw you it can draw you up to 2 cards, and it has the ability to turn into a Cliff Racer. So the upside of Shadow Scale Hunter is fairly marginal, and the upside of a Forerunner is amazing. And in the worst case scenarios, they pretty much do the same thing. They both eat removal. They both trade into a creature. They're both so like worst case scenario, they're the same. Best case scenario, Forerunner is so much better than this. And that's a tricolor card. So if that's not a fair comparison, then you can compare this card with a Young Mammoth. Like, is this card better than a Young Mammoth? No, because 4 toughness means it survives Reverberating Strike. It means it survives a lot of 3-cost removal, demanding things like 4-cost removal, like a Lightning Bolt. So, more often than not, Young Mammoth is important to remove guards for your other threats. So it synergizes better than with Shadow Scale Hunter. Like, well, imagine you have Shadow Scale Hunter and you have Orc Clan Captain. Those things are anti-synergistic. So Young Mammoth, on the other hand, synergizes much more easily with other cards because when it punches through, so if they put weak guards like Treeminder. A Treeminder is a card that can really take off. Like if you had a Bleak Coast Troll and there's a Treeminder in front of it, that thing did its job. It stopped 5 damage, which basically means it healed 5. Like a Treeminder put in front of a Bleak Coast Troll is the same thing as gain 5 health. So, in addition to ramping, a Young Mammoth changes that equation by basically blasting through with Breakthrough and saying, no, sir, your Treeminder was just a ramp. It did not heal you, and it only healed you 1 life, right? That's a 5 times difference. So that's making Young Mammoth much more synergistic with other cards, and Shadow Scale Hunter doesn't naturally have those synergies. In order to get more value out of the move, you need to pair it with movement-based cards, which there are some, but those movement-based cards already seem a little bit on the lackluster niche side and more difficult to get value out of. They're not impossible to play at a high level. They're just very difficult to consistently get wins through. That's what I would say about the movement-based decks. They're good. They can win. They can do a lot of damage. They can pilfer. But I'm not familiar enough to say this card deserves a spot in that deck. Unrelenting Siege. Friendly creatures with 1 power may attack an extra time each turn. So Unrelenting Siege at first can be seen as a very bad card. I don't think it's a bad card. I think it's a good card that's underrated. It just needs very specific combo cards with it. Bandari Opportunist is an example of this. And when you combine it with Master of Thieves, they can attack 3 times. So if you have Unrelenting Siege with Master of Thieves and 1 attack creatures like Bandari Opportunist, Unrelenting Siege says you can attack an additional time. Master of Thieves means you can attack another time. So they can attack 3 times. And with another Master of Thieves, they can attack 4 times. With another Unrelenting Siege, they can attack 5 times. So these cards, so it's funny. It's funny when you say they're a good card because, 1, they're absolutely not arena playable. This kind of card needs to be a 3 of. This kind of card needs to have a lot of 1 toughness creatures, 1 attack creatures. You don't have the wiggle room or the control to make your deck look like that. So you should pass on this card every single time you see it on arena. In Constructed, it's not playable by any deck except for decks that are running Bandari Opportunists and a bunch of 1/1s that are trying to sneak, and Master of Thieves that are trying to sneak in a lot of attacks. At least as far as I can see. Maybe in the future, there's another deck that can take advantage of this. But Unrelenting Siege, I don't like how the card art and the ability go together because I don't think of trebuchets as 1/1 attack creatures. Like trebuchets break down castles, so castles cannot fall to 1/1 pilfering dudes. So there's something a little bit weird about the design of this card from a art appeal, from a lore appeal. So it is very niche, and I've only seen 1 person actually play this deck, and it lost to me. So when I say it's good, I should say that no one has actually found a way to make this win games. But I think it is good enough to enable a new type of deck. Like Unrelenting Siege will be a type of deck, right? I'm hoping Sparky Pants Studios is a little bit more vigilant. So if Unrelenting Siege has like a 2% win rate, they should do something to buff the card. Like if they do something to buff the card, that can make it much more playable. Like if they buffed it to 2 magic, if they made it 2 Magico, I mean, is that going to be like the newest combo? Possibly, it could, right? So I think it's weird. So I might need to take back saying it's good. This card has the potential to be good. It has cards like Bandari Opportunist that do synergize with it. It does have Master of Thieves that do synergize with it, which means that would be like a monk deck, right? But as of the moment, there weren't decks running around poking people with 1 attack creatures. I guess you could say you could even say a token synergize with this. But if they are vigilant, they do have the data. So game designers can basically see things like win rates of specific cards, like how many times does this game win relative to how many times it's played. And that's the kind of thing that they could definitely, if they're willing to, make the tweaks and say, look, this card's underperforming, let's do something about it. Or they can just, one way of doing less work is basically saying, look, we are already working on our next set, and if this is underperforming, well, we're going to learn from that. Next time we're going to release more cards. Because it could be an endless battle of basically tweaking cards and then retweaking and stuff like that. I would prefer to see them retweak this card. Maybe a little cheaper. But it definitely is an enabler. This card enables future deck archetypes. Valenwood Sentry, Prophecy Guard. This card is like, draft every copy you see this of. Do you want every copy of this in Versus Arena? It's actually possible to have 4 copies of a card in Versus Arena, if I'm not incorrect. I believe you can actually have more copies than 3. Like, if this card showed up 4 times, I would take 4 copies of it in Versus Arena. Prophecy is such a relevant keyword in the Versus Arena metagame. And my Prophecy rule is, can I play this from hand and feel bad about it? Like, if I play this from hand, do I feel good about it? And the answer is yes, because Guard is also really relevant. Guard is something that really can mess people up. Let's say you have a control the field lane, you have a 1 toughness creature, but he's a 5 attack, 1 toughness creature that took damage, and they start putting 1 toughness creatures in front of it. Valenwood Sentry is a great answer to just put in front of those cards and say, nope, you're not going anywhere. And if you have real control of that lane, you can dictate trades and basically keep a lot of your cards alive to get maximum value out of them. So if you have a bunch of cards that are injured in Versus Arena, consider that good. So like if you have 4 creatures in the field lane and all of them are almost dead, but they're not dead, that means you're winning, because that means they killed things and they are alive, and a creature that has 1 toughness is still going to be able to do the same amount of damage as a creature that has full toughness. Like if it had 4/1, it's going to be able to do 4 damage to them, even if it was it doesn't matter if it was a 4/3 or 4/1, it's still going to be able to do 4 damage. As unrealistic as it sounds, because in real life, if you went through a battle and you almost died from a card attack, your attack should lower too, right? But we're in a card game, so your attack and your toughness are not related to each other. So when this thing comes off of a Prophecy, the tempo swing, from my experience, has been so huge, it's almost game-winning. Like, a 4/3 coming out of for free in a very tight game is a difference maker. Not only do you have the answer to basically immediately block and save yourself, but it has the ability to potentially trade into, because it has with a 4 attack, it can trade into much more higher value targets. At the same time, if you choose not to trade, let's say they break the Prophecy with their most aggressively statted creature, and they have 2 more creatures that have sort of low attack, maybe 1 attack or less. Well, it can kill both of those creatures, or it can force them in a situation where they have a creature who can no longer attack. Maybe they have a 2 attack creature who is their last attacker, prophecy triggers, you block them with Valen Wood Sentry. Valen Wood Sentry just gained you 2 life. On top of that, next turn you have the option of, well, maybe it can't trade exactly into their highest toughness creature. Maybe it can't take out their 5/5, but it can do 4 damage to their face, assisting the other lane where you're creating more pressure. At the same time, it will demand a trade and stop one of their attacks from getting through. And if it stops their 5/5, it basically gained you 5 life. So if they had other creatures that, like they had two attack creatures, maybe they might trade multiple of them, but maybe there's only one 2 attack creature and one 5 attack creature. They're forced to use the 5 attack, right? And that's where I think Valen Wood Sentry is an all-star card in Versus Arena. In Constructed, this one's hard. It's hard in Constructed because Prophecy, the best prophecies in the game are in Guildsword colors. Think Piercing Javelin. It's the best. It's probably one of the best prophecies in the game when triggered for free. So we will talk about the upside when it's triggered and when it's played from hand. Piercing Javelin is probably the best prophecy off the top. Just like if they trigger it, that's the best one. It's a 5 value, so it's worth more. And it removes the threat. It doesn't matter what kind of threat. It could remove a 12/12, right? Played from hand, Piercing Javelin is also one of the most amazing cards. It's not unheard of for players to actually have Piercing Javelin broken in, and they'll keep it. Like I remember there was a game where Aini, Piercing Javelin came off the prophecy. There was a perfectly valid target. He chose not to use it because he had another answer for that card, and he thought Piercing Javelin was so high value because it could remove much, much more threatening targets. So Guildsworn, if you want to run a prophecy-rich deck, Willpower, because of Piercing Javelin, already has some of the best prophecies. Cloud Rest Illusionist is even better. Cloud Rest Illusionist is a better card than this because Cloud Rest Illusionist played from hand. Actually, Cloud Rest Illusionist many times is better played from hand, and usually the reason why you like it off of Prophecy is because you just want the 4/3 stat line. And that's cool because that can help in aggressive to aggressive. 4/3 is good. It's very strong body. But the -4/0, sometimes you don't have control. Like if they attacked with their most aggressive statted creature, the 4/0 might just save you 1 or 2 damage. But the -4 played from hand can dictate serious field lane trades. Like you could trade into Young Mammoths, Bleak Coast Trolls, and survive. So the problem about this card isn't that it's bad, it's that there are way better prophecies in different colors. And green's other prophecies aren't so good. So if you were putting this in your deck, chances are your other green prophecies are pretty potato. So if you had this, so like if you had this card in, so prophecies as a concept are very good. They're very strong if you run more prophecies. Like the more prophecies you run, the more likely you're going to hit prophecies, and the more consistent you could build your game plan around it. Like my Covenant deck runs purple and red, blue and red have so many prophecies. Purple not so much, and blue and red has things like Shrieking Harpy, great played from hand, great from a prophecy. Mournhold Gatekeeper, great played from hand, great from a prophecy. Circle Initiate, same thing. When you're playing those decks, you're trying to stack your deck with like 20 like about 15 to 20 prophecies that are all good played from hand. Green does not naturally have access to those kind of cards. And as a card played from hand, this card shines more in Versus Arena because Versus Arena is much more aggressive metagame. Guard and Prophecy are stronger keywords, I believe. They are much more stronger in Versus Arena than they are in Constructed. Like -4, like Cloud Rest Illusionist is still better pickup than Valen Wood Sentry. So like, if you had a choice between, if they were both in the draft, you go with Cloud Rest Illusionist all day. And that's the same situation that you're coming into with Constructed. Is you have so much more choice. It's like a buffet where you have so many more choices of prophecies. And Green's lack of other prophecies makes this worse and worse and worse and worse. And in Constructed, Guard is not as good as what the other prophecies can do. Assassin Beetle, 5-cost beast, 2/2 prophecy, play a prophecy from your hand. So it looks like Alliance Wars trying to add more prophecies into green colors. Interesting. I had this card in First Arena. This is weird because there's not enough prophecies in green necessarily to warrant this, but this card could theoretically this card is for synergizing with other classes. So like, I don't even know if there's enough cards in Prophecy Assassin, but if you played Assassin, like the name says Assassin Beetle, so if you played Assassin Beetle in Assassin, and then you played it on top of the Fate Weaver, and then you used Fate Weaver to play another Prophecy, that could be a crazy tempo swing. 5 Magicka, you got more than 5/5 worth of stats, depending on what the third Prophecy is. I just don't know if Assassin has enough Prophecies to run a Prophecy deck. Granted, there with the new tricolors, maybe you could run Prophecy. Prophecy Dagoff, green, red, blue. Sounds kind of scary. Like, it sounds kind of bad to have a 75 card Prophecy Dagoff list, but Assassin Beetle is a move in that direction. This is a pretty bad card, probably in both Constructed and Arena, because 5 cost is just too much. Like, for 5 costs, you want something better than a Phalanx Exemplar. Okay, Phalanx Exemplar is a 5/6 with the upside of being able to give you 1/2s potentially. So this 5 Magicka, like, you would need to pull 3/4 in stats in Prophecy. So you need to drop a 3/4 Prophecy card on the field with Assassin Beetle to just be even with a Phalanx Exemplar and just be a little below, because Phalanx Exemplar has guard, Phalanx Exemplar is a single body, arguable maybe 2 bodies better than 1, and it has the ability of being able to trigger an ability. So Assassin Beetle doesn't make the cut. But the presence of this card means the design team thinks that green needs more prophecies. So if they start releasing some good prophecies, Assassin Beetle becomes good. Like, what happens if they release a 10-cost card that's a prophecy? 10-card prophecy, and the card's called Prophetic Dragon. Yeah. Assassin Beetle just went from super bad to super good. Like, if there was a 10-cost prophecy card, I don't think you'll ever release such a thing. But it's doable. Like, a 10-cost prophecy card could be doable if its stats were, like, lackluster. Like, it's a 10-cost prophecy 6/6. No ability. Fair. That sounds fair to me, because, like, played from hand, it's completely potato. But, like, played from a prophecy, first rune prophecy, a 6/6 would be so crazy. Assassin Beetle would suddenly synergize with that card and make it, I can consistently get this card on the ground. You would get 8/8 worth of stats at 5 Magicka, if that was the thing. So, Daedric Titan. Daedric Titan is an interesting card. It's a good card. This is a very good card, I believe, for Arena and for Constructed. It's not seeing a lot of play at the moment in Constructed because the condition of having a creature in each lane is more easily executed in Arena than in Constructed. But, that being said, with these token-based decks, Empire Recruiter, and other sort of go-wide Empire Dominion decks, Daedric Titan can suddenly fit into both of those. And its ability can turn on and turn off. So the thing is, let's say you play this. So what makes this card a little bit better than, say, Bruma Oppressor? Bruma Oppressor says, summon if you have a card on each lane, then set one creature's ability to blah, blah, blah. Daedric Titan's ability, you can play him naked as the only creature on the lane and without the ability, and you could reactivate and deactivate the ability as the board state evolves. So, like, if you have Daedric Titan and you put him on the same lane as a Empire Recruiter, he won't have Drain, and your opponent could target him with actions. But the moment your Empire Recruiter pilfers and a 1/1 shows up on the other side of the field, Daedric Titan gets immunity and he gets Drain. So there is flexibility here, so it's not a summon ability. If it was summon, this would be hands down worse and probably borderline unplayable. Like if this got summon, if you have another creature in each lane, it's much harder to trigger because you only have one shot, and then you may not be able to play him on curve comfortably because on turn 5, if you don't have those conditions met, it's you're basically paying. You actually got 5/5 worth of stats for 5. So do not be fooled. A 6/4 is basically the same as 5/5 in stats. So that's the same thing as a tusk boar. So that's too much. You're overpaying because Bleak Coast Troll is 5/5 for 4. So you're overpaying on that condition. What you really want in this situation is Drain. And so Drain is so the reason a 6/4 Drain is relevant is probably in the aggro mirror, because you don't really care about Drain versus control, but against aggro, it becomes super relevant. And that gives us our most natural comparison for Daedric Titan is Brynjolf. Brynjolf, 5 cost, 4/5, 4/5 Drain. Is it a 4/5? 4/5 Drain. When you drain or pilfer, gain 1 Magicka. People usually forget about that. I think people forget about that, gain 1 Magicka, because I've definitely seen people like pass a turn and then be like, oops, like they use the oops emote. I've been guilty of that, and I've now realized to start, when I have a Brynjolf, I think, okay, do I have drains, do I have pilfers, do I have giant bats? Is there a way that I can push and make use of my extra Magicka? Brynjolf is a very good card. He's considered staple in so many decks. So if Daedric Titans gets his drain off and gets 1 attack in, that's considered high value. So under those conditions, Daedric Titan is a good card. But you need the drain to go off, because Brynjolf, what makes Brynjolf good is the drain, not so much the gain Magicka part. The gain Magicka part is sort of icing on the cake. It can come to play, can be relevant, but it's not the reason why people play Brynjolf. Brynjolf is I want a card that helps me stabilize the board, because maybe I don't have Golden Initiates, maybe I don't have access to Barrow Stalkers, or maybe I do have access to Barrow Stalkers, and in addition to Barrow Stalkers, I want to build in redundancy in my deck and have more drain creatures. The advantage Daedric Titan has is if you trigger this ability, he can't target it with actions, which basically means Daedric Titan is an aggressive draining creature that's better than Brynjolf, because most people are killing Brynjolf with actions. But it's worth noting Brynjolf isn't just dealt with actions, he's dealt with silence, Earthbone Spinners, for example. And those kind of things would still affect Daedric Titan. So some of the same weaknesses of Brynjolf carry over to Daedric Titan. But if you silence him, at least he's still got that aggressive stat line. In fact, if Brynjolf and Daedric Titan were both to be silenced, you would rather have a Daedric Titan because he has the 6 attack in aggressive lineup. And that's something that makes Daedric Titan maybe a little off from Brynjolf, is Brynjolf has 4 attack and Daedric has 6. That doesn't mean Brynjolf's worse, because in many situations, let's say you're against an aggressive deck, your goal with Brynjolf is actually to only drain and not crack a rune. So if you are forced to attack their face, you are more happy it was 4 and not 6, because 6 would crack a rune and give them an additional card resource. So in the perfect world, when you're a control player, Brynjolf's not actually attacking a person, he's actually attacking creatures, because you want to attack a person maybe maximum once, and after that you're trying to attack creatures so that you're not breaking any runes. Daedric Titan has a kind of awkward situation where, well, it's not awkward, but it's basically he's more optimized to go face and to trade and to race kind of thing. If you silence me, I'm a 6/4 threat, I'm still dangerous, and I'm trying to take you out. And this is okay because Dominion, for example, and Empire both have willpower, and willpower has a lot of gold initiates, other drain creatures, Dominion Oathmans. So, and they also have access to Brynjolf. So a deck could be running Daedric Titans Brynjolf's Dominions if they really wanted to hate aggro. If they really wanted drain. Which is a little bit... It's okay because we should realize that when you're playing ladder, there are days and moments where there are just aggro decks on ladder. I lost this morning to a deck that was super, I want to say dumb, but it was smart. It was dumb because the deck would have lost against any other deck, but it was perfect against my deck. That's the kind of thing that Daedric Titan could be very, like, I actually think that that would be a smart move by a person. If a person had a read, like, right now, people are just running aggro decks. If I get infinitely many drain creatures in my deck, we win the game. So you just, like, run this deck. You know this deck just loses to control decks. So you basically just say, look, we're just going to hate them so much. So if we are we're playing in a moment where there are 10 different people playing aggro decks and we run into 10 aggro lists, we're going to win 10 games because of Daedric Titans. Not just Daedric Titans, Barrowstalkers, Brynjolfs, every drain creature in the game. It can work. And in those situations, you're not viewing Daedric Titan as a good or a bad card. You're basically saying, look, Daedric Titan is the perfect card against the decks we're running against in ladder right now. Let's put him in right now. And the moment we start running into control decks, let's just not play this card anymore. Let's clone this deck, make another deck, and switch him out for something that's more appropriate. But it's definitely a card that can hate on certain decks. I remember facing against it and thinking to myself, this card's very difficult to deal with. If they have control of the board, this card can easily sneak in 3 attacks. And 3 times 6 is 18. So this card could be a win condition in itself. With the what it becomes is kind of capture the flag, or King of the Hill. With Daedric Titan, all they need to do is just make sure there's a 1/1 in the other lane at all times. And put you in a situation where removing 1/1s is not Magicka efficient, because if you can't lightning bolt a 1/1 in the lane that's giving Daedric Titan, and you can't lightning bolt Daedric Titan because he's got the 1/1 protecting his flank. Those are good situations for the Titan. Hello, Fextwin, talking about Inspiring Soldier, good in Halalu. That's a good point. I didn't talk about Halalu. I'm not familiar with him in Halalu. Is there a particular reason why he's good in Halalu? Because I know Halalu is just good. So I thought Halalu had so many 2-drops that the 3/2 would be a little... Maybe Pit Lion, you could... Oh, wait. He doesn't put Pit Lion on the field because 1/1 is in the same lane. So he doesn't automatically put Pit Lion on the field. So Spoils of War, 5-cost action. Draw 2 cards and power cost 1. This card, best card in green so far. Is there a better card that we've seen? No. Spoils of War is the best card. Actually, just looking at it overall, Spoils of War is the best card in the set from green. It is played in... You could play this in any card deck that has green. It could be a Ebonheart, it could be Slay, it could be Assassin, it could be Scout. Drawing cards is always good. Drawing cards, 5 Magicka for 5-cost draw 2 cards, it's totally fine. People play Moose. They play Wilds Incarnate, 2 draw 2 cards. That's a 7-cost card with the conditional you need your runes intact. So people, 5/6 guard is relevant in a lot of matchups, but it's not the reason why people want Wilds Incarnate. They want the cards. So Spoils of War could be seen as a cheaper Wilds Incarnate that has the upside of being made cheaper, and it's very easy to make this cheaper. Like, market-based Assassin Market can turn this card into a 0-cost card easily. I'm a little bit running out of voice, so I won't go into all the details, but Spoils of War can be easily triggered 5 times in a market deck. You use Forked Bolt, deals 1 damage to the face. That's 1 Empower charge. Market deals 1 damage to the face because that was a 0-cost card. That's 2. So with just 2 spells, Spoils of War is immediately a 3-cost card. With small creatures like Thieves' Guild Recruit poking, empowering Spoils of War into a 0-cost card becomes very easy. I would say Spoils of War is definitely playable at 4 Magicka. You play him at 5 Magicka is not the best situation. Maybe that's a little bit below. It's a tempo loss, unless it's late game. At late game, you have so much magic on your MTN cards, you don't even care. Spoils of War is what you're trying to top deck. But in a situation where you're not top decking, you shouldn't even be playing Spoils of War, and you should try to only play it when you're discounting and you don't have any other options. If you're able to trigger it to 4 cost, you can definitely make it work, but that's not ideal and optimal. But for an aggro deck, for a control deck, it's perfectly fine. Nothing's happening on the board. It's 4 cost. Let's go. Spoils of War. It's great. Your opponent didn't do anything. You got more cards. Bringing it down to 3 feels good, although bringing it to 2 and 1 should be the real goal. 2, 1, and 0 are where you want to be at, because you just need to hit 3 times. Connecting 3 times with the face could be a Nord Firebrand and 2 other small creatures. And when they get the Spoils of War off, it can really round out the curve. Maybe you just put a 2-drop and then you use 3 cards for Spoils of War. Maybe you have a 3-drop and then you have a 1-cost Spoils of War. Spoils of War is flexible because it can basically fit into those turns where you had extra magicka to begin with. So if you do not play with Spoils of War, you're doing something wrong in green. Spoils of War is the best green card. It's playable in control, it's playable in aggro, it's playable in combo. So I do like seeing this card in the game. One nerf. Okay, so people who do not like market should probably realize that this is the card that's actually enabled market-based strategies to even work. People have told me Swindler's market decks were not very successful before Spoils of War. I can't confirm or deny because I did not play before Isles of Madness, and I did not achieve high enough level to know what people were even playing until Alliance War. So Spoils of War, the nerf that has been suggested is that Empower only affects cards already in hand. And this is to stop Spoils of War from chaining. Because right now, these combo decks, Abomination and Market, they are basically chaining one Spoils of War, empowering it to 0 cost, and then using Spoils of War to find another Spoils of War, and then they're using Empower again to find another Spoils of War. That's when they can do 40 damage to your face. And I think that's fairly unreasonable. From a design point of view, I think Market being able to do 40 damage, break 5 runes, is a design failure. I think it's a design failure because the rune-based system was created. Like, okay, think about what makes Elder Scrolls Legends more fun than Magic the Gathering. I don't like dying on turn 3. Like, I don't like dying on turn 3. And why did they put 5 runes to protect your face? Why did they put 30 health? I remember explicitly wishing there was a game that had 30 health before I knew Elder Scrolls Legends even existed. I was playing Magic the Gathering Arena. I was playing Shadowverse. Shadowverse has 20 life. Magic the Gathering, 20 life. I liked those card games, but it felt like aggro beatdown decks just... Like, yeah, sure, there were like combo decks. There were combo decks in both those decks. But in Shadowverse especially, it was like, man, I can't really play with a lot of cards I'd like to play with or play strategies I'd like to play with because these games are ending so fast. Or so suddenly. I mean, in fact, that's probably what makes me not play Magic the Gathering Arena right now. Magic the Gathering Arena has a higher level of polish, and it's a much... It's like, okay, it's okay from a... It has a higher level of polish in terms of production values. They have a bigger budget, for sure. But from a gameplay design standpoint, people were playing this card called, like, Flame Kiln. Alright, so I was playing mono blue aggro in Magic the Gathering Arena, and it was because... Literally, it's like, the things people were doing in that game were just nuts. Like, they were nuts. Like, there's a card that was new, called something Flame, I think it was new to me, like Flame Kiln. This thing was like, every time you play a red spell, get a +1/+1 counter. Every time you remove a +1/+1 counter, get 3 red mana. And then there was this 3-cost mana card that said, Your opponent has a choice. Okay, 3 cost card. Your opponent has a choice. You may choose to take 5 damage, or you may choose for your opponent to draw 2 cards. Oh, by the way, they could play this card from the discard pile. What the hell? Like, dude, that card just... It's not fun to play against. Like, it's not fun. It's not fun. Like, the only way I can say it's just not fun. Like, it's like you put cards down, and these just like, they put... This card costs 2 magicka, and suddenly it's generating... This thing is generating, like, 10 mana. It's generating 5 counters, and it's giving you a friendly choice. You know, you have a friendly choice to lose 1/4 of your health, or give them 2 more cards. And it's like, screwed. You're screwed because they can play it from the discard pile, so they can play it again. So it's not like... So you play this card. Either way, it's bad. Like, you take 5 damage, it's bad. I mean, half the time you have to take the 5 damage, because if they draw 2 cards, they're going to draw another one, and they're just going to do the same thing twice. Like it's like... And that was the problem with those decks, is they just didn't feel... They're not fun to play against. You can't even do anything. Like, it's just... You know, you're just sitting there, and you're just... I can't do anything. Can't interact. You're choosing pain. I'm choosing pain. Like, games are supposed to be fun, and this is painful. I'm sitting through just, like, getting tortured. Spoils of War has that effect on Market if it's not nerfed. And the nerf that I think that would make it appropriate, because I love the card, it's a great card, so playable, is that if it does not Empower does not carry over into cards in your deck. Because if Empower carries over, if Empower just applied to cards already in hand, it would significantly stop their ability to chain these things. And I'm okay with these. Like, Swindler's Market has some cool concept. It's okay to deal like 10, 20 damage. Like, 20 damage is undoable. 40 damage is like nuts, dude. Like, it's not right. It's not right to make a person... Like, it's hard for me to recommend a person to game. Like, you know, Elder Scrolls Legends is a great game. You want to sit through a market? Well, let me show you what this game is like. Let's play. Let's see what Assassin Market's like. Let's just sit there and you enjoy the game while they kill you. Oh, and by the way, these 5 runes were designed to protect you from people OTKing you like this. So maybe there was a switch in lead designer or something, because I don't believe the person who designed the 5 runes could have ever been okay with Swindler's Market, Spoils of War going off the way it does. And perhaps it's because they hate what I was just talking about, the whole hopelessness. I think there's a hopelessness factor of playing against that red deck I was explaining. It's like, it's a hopeless feeling. It's really, there's not a... It isn't even about, did you get good card draws? It's about, did they get a bad card draw? It is completely chance-based. Like, if they draw that card in conjunction with the other card, they can play that card all the way to the highest rank of Magic the Gathering. Six cost Invoker of the Hist. Argonian. Veteran. Restore your magicka. I've only seen one person play this card, and that's TDC Jason. So that gives me a question. One, do people even have this card? Right now, I don't think many people have this card. So this card's a rare card. Like, one, it's rare because, first of all, there's so many legends in this set. When you crack open packs, actually, it's pretty hard to get legendaries from packs. It's one of the things I don't like about Elder Scrolls Legends monetization, is a player like me is willing to invest more money in the game, but we feel bad when we buy packs. Like, I actually feel pretty bad. Like, okay, this game is both generous and selfish at the same time. It's just kind of inconsistent. I say this because I played a lot of Gwent. Gwent is hands down just generous. It's not selfish at all. I got 95% of the cards in premium, and I have every single legendary equivalent in Gwent right now in premium. It's like not even,
I feel bad in Gwent if I have a legendary card and it's not premium. Like I'm just thinking to myself, okay, that's anomaly because I have premium sets of everything, and I've spent, you know how much money I spent on Gwent? $2.99. Elder Scrolls Legends, I've spent probably like $80, probably $80, close to 80. I've spent close to $80, which is 40 times more than Gwent. The idea of having every legendary is impossible for me. It's like impossible. I can't actually see a world where I even spent 3 or 4 times more money and I would still have the legend. I wouldn't have the legendaries. If I spent 4 times more money on Elder Scrolls Legends, I would not have the cards yet. So that's the sort of not generous part. The generous part about Elder Scrolls Legends are those how gold coins work. I think the gold coins is very generous. The gold coins enable people, like those starter packs, those 500 gold coins, the stories, everything. I think those things are actually worth money. And I think those things, like, in my point of view, I would actually have made those things money only, exclusive. Like, I would have made it, you have to pay for those stories. And I would have made the game more generous overall in craft. Like, so my design philosophy would be, look, it's okay to make cards exclusive playsets that you have to pay for. So like Falkirth Defiler would have been a pay-for only card. And then cards like Invoker of the Hist would be easier to acquire. And I think that would be healthier for the game, personally. It might be difficult for Elder Scrolls Legends to make that pivot because once you've built a community and you've already made things go a certain way, people get used to things. But it's actually it's a discussion worth having because Invoker of the Hist probably is not a bad card and probably would allow more interesting deck types to be played, and allow people to have more fun if people could even have it. I say if people could even have it. People can't really have this card because there's so many other cards to craft. You have to play a lot of Elder Scrolls Legends to start crafting things at will. So like if you're a normal human being, which I'm not, I'm playing way more than normal, a normal human being. A normal human being could not play with Invoker of the Hist because this card is just not good enough in a majority of decks, and it's not easy enough to get. So in my world, I would love this card to be easier to get. Like I wish soul gems were easier to farm, and then to balance that off, the story modes cost money only. You can't get them for free, and that actually encourages people who are purchasing those packs to feel really good about it. And you could even make a sweetener on it. None of those could be premium only sets. Like it could be like like every Falkirth Defiler you saw was a premium card. And the reason it's a premium card is because it's only people who bought them got access to that set. And it would be fair if people had free reign to craft basically other cards. So it enabled people who want to show love to the game to get the cards they want, while making it easier for people and encouraging people to be more creative and experiment and have fun with the game. And that's something that I'm struggling with too, right? Because I've already spent $80. I don't see a world where I get Invoker of the Hist, 3 copies of him, anytime soon. Spend $500 on this game. I don't even think if I spent $500 on this game, I still don't think I would have Invoker of the Hist 3 copies. Like that's actually possible because I'm already planning on this year. We're going to have 3 more expansions. I'm going to pre-order all 3 of them. What's that? 49. That's 50. 50 times 3. That's 150. 150 plus 80. 230. That's $230 spent, and none of it got me any closer to Invoker of the Hist. So that's probably worth noting. Or you could say that I had a chance to get it when I did the first pre-order. So that's sort of about like computer card game economics, but like Invoker of the Hist is not. It's worth noting that TDC Jason actually works for Sparky Pants Studios. That's kind of why I got on this tangent, is because the only person who's even played this card is a person who has 100% of the cards in the game because he works at Sparky Pants Studio. Outside of that, I've not seen a single person play this card. And I don't anticipate anyone getting to play a chance with this card because this card is the kind of card that you need to practice with. So this is the kind of card that... So I actually watched the games. Like I was spectating him and seeing him play with this card.
this card was enabling some really cool plays, but it required practice. So it's like the amount of buy-in this card is this is a very demanding card. This card says, in order to play me, you need multiple copies of me, maybe even 3. In order to play me, you need to spend a lot of time on this game or spend a lot of money in this game. In order to play me, you then need to practice with me, and in order to play with me, you need to play in a combo deck that actually requires a bunch of other cards. So good luck. So Invoker of the Hist is hands down hardcore only players would probably be playing this card and getting full value, which is a travesty, because like from a design point of view, a game should both appeal to casual and hardcore gamers. Believe it or not, the majority of people play Elder Scrolls Legends, and the majority of people who spend money on this game are casual players. So the people who are actually floating the business are casual players. So their ability to have fun when Invoker of the Hist is really important to me, I think. And Gwent knows this too, right? So in Gwent, even the most casual players have access to cards like Invoker of the Hist, and the most hardcore players have premium play sets of Invoker of the Hist. That's the way it should work. All the hardcore players have full premium sets. All the casual players should be able to play with these cards. And this is more about liberalness of how open you want to make a game, right? The economics also pays out if the game becomes more popular. So Elder Scrolls Legends is an unpopular game. So because it's unpopular, you're running a situation where you need to squeeze more dollars out of fewer players. But a huge marketing sort of strategy that might work is like, hey, let's make this less painful and more fun, because if a game is more fun, it should attract more players. Because there's a lot of people who play Elder Scrolls Legends, both casual and hardcore, who have played other game titles and who love Elder Scrolls Legends more. An example. The reason why they love it more is because it has better blah, 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 blah. So if we can give Elder Scrolls Legends more competitive advantages, more reasons to be better than other games, maybe it's cheaper, maybe it's more fun, maybe you can get a collection faster, maybe it's got a deeper metagame. Maybe there's no super serious OTKs that kill you in turn 5, right? That was one of the appeals that made Elder Scrolls Legends even better than Magic the Gathering, but is in danger because of market with Spoils of War. So, talking about this card is really about... I guess I'm getting a little triggered about the idea that people can't even play with this card. So, like, this card is a card that people would love to play with, but people can't even play with it, so it kind of sucks. Invoker of the Hist, Restore Your Magicka, I can only describe that I saw it used in the TDC Jason deck, and it was basically a Telvanni combo deck, or a Scout combo deck. I don't remember. Both. I think he tried both. The idea was using this with a Nixox and Lyneth could give access to some crazy plays. Invoker of the Hist is a very tough statted creature. It's difficult to remove, and chances are it's a little redundant, as if you were to play this creature, you have Nixoxes. So if they remove this creature, then you're still okay because you have Nixox. You have other combo pieces. This card is only for a combo deck. Like, it's not for just a ramp deck. This is a ramp combo deck. You're talking about 50 Magicka. This card is meant to enable 50 Magicka plays, where you do crazy plays with Lyneth, Doppelgangers, Night to Remember, Ulfric's Uprising. Those are the kind of plays Invoker of the Hist was meant to interact with. That being said, those decks got nerfed really hard. It's funny, they got nerfed really hard, quote unquote, because of Ulfric Uprising going from 6 cost to 7, and Genius Pathmage going from 6 cost to 7, I believe. I think that's exactly the 2 nerfs that made this Telvanni combo deck incredibly more difficult to combo off. So it's kind of funny to see Invoker of the Hist included, as that deck already had so many cards that it cared about. So it didn't need more cards, it has the cards to do the combo already. So Invoker of the Hist, is it really a buff to a deck type that already has the cards? Does it replace Genius Pathmage? It's hard to say. It doesn't get value from Ulfric's Uprising. Veteran, Restore Your Magicka. Invoker of the Hist
like, see, this is the kind of card I would want to experiment with. I would put it in a sleigh deck. I would take it into casual mode and see if this does anything, and if Falkreath Defiler can do anything cool with this. Because there is a world where Invoker of the Hist might do crazy stuff for an Unstoppable Rage deck. It's true those Unstoppable Rage decks have a lot of Magicka, but that also makes it more of a benefit. So if you have 20 Magicka to begin with, and restore your Magicka means you get your 20 Magicka back, that means you got twice as much value than if you were like 12 Magicka. And I don't see a world, why not Unstoppable Rage combined with like a bunch of other cards. There are games where you have Cicero just going off with Dark Brotherhood Sanctuary, and because of Dark Brotherhood Sanctuary, you can have almost unlimited cards if you had unlimited Magicka. So you can play like 6-7 cards in a game. You can play 6 or 7 cards in a turn with Cicero and Spoils of War kind of combination. So Invoker of the Hist does seem like it could be a one-of inclusion in a sleigh deck. A 3/6 body is not meaningless, and the ability to bring it back with Falkreath Defiler makes him, he's kind of a high-value target. I mean, he's not like a mirror breaker. Like, she doesn't exactly say this card beats the control mirror. Like, this card's not as good as bringing back Odoving. It's not as good as bringing back a Mana Marco. But there are some plays that, maybe could be experimented and see if anything can be done. Again, I think that's all I can say about the Invoker of the Hist, because I've not seen it played, other than by TDC Jason. So, Debilitate. Action, give all creatures -2/-2 in power. Costs 1 less. Debilitate is an amazing card. It's one of the best cards in the green set. It's probably the second best in the entire Alliance War expansion after Spoils of War. Spoils of War and Debilitate play pretty similarly because of the Empower ability. So in a control deck that runs Spoils of War, you would also run Debilitate. Debilitate is a board control tool, and on the surface it doesn't look good because it actually nukes your units and their units, and if you empowered it, you actually had units, so you probably did actually nuke your Merchant's Camels and your Thieves Guild Recruit. But the thing is, it's been compared to Ice Storm as even better than Ice Storm for several reasons. One, its effect is permanent. So -2/-2 not only kills 2 toughness creatures, but if it hits creatures with toughness greater than 2, it actually makes them weaker. And that makes it objectively better than Ice Storm, because Ice Storm only kills 3 toughness creatures, and if they have more than 3 toughness, it doesn't do anything. So the next turn, they can still do full damage. I mean, it does set them up for things like Firebolt and stuff, but overall, it's not a clean answer to Young Mammoth, Bleak Coast Troll. It's just, we removed some of their warded creatures, and we removed some of their wards, we removed some of their weaker creatures, and we didn't get rid of their tough creatures, so we're going to take a bunch of damage. Debilitate actually also is stronger because it can go through wards. So things like Daggerfall Mage instantly die to Debilitate, Wardcrafter instantly die. And so these creatures actually permanently get weaker, silence notwithstanding, because if those creatures are silenced, like if a Bleak Coast Troll gets debilitated and it gets silenced, it gets its stats back. Another way that it could conditionally become better than Ice Storm is if you can empower it more than twice. If you can empower it more than once. If you empower it once, it's Ice Storm cost. If you empower it twice, it's actually cheaper. It's going to be 5 cost and cheaper. And Debilitate has the ability to be played for 0 cost. And in combo decks with Swindler's Market, they're able to trigger this 7 times pretty frequently. So they're able to actually get Debilitate off for free, which is pretty crazy. That's a card that's better than Ice Storm in many situations, gone off for free. The only situation where it's objectively worse than Ice Storm is when you're trying to build a board, which does happen. So this card is teched in to conscription lists, which run a lot of creatures, a lot of 2-drops, and they run this to break the mirror. So you run this as a response to your opponent's conscription or your opponent's aggro plan. Like, it's a stabilization tool. So it's not so good if you have your own board and you nuke your own board, but it's not as bad as it sounds because the onus is on you. You can choose when to play this card. So you can basically say, you can gauge, if I played it now, who is hurt more? Does this help me more or does it hurt me more? If it hurts you more, then just don't play the card. And if it helps you more, then just play the card. So it's not going to be a big deal of nuking your own board because you can choose when you do the nuking.
The card art is fascinating, in my opinion. I found out from Twitter that Debilitate's card art is actually created by a outsourced studio. So Elder Scrolls Legends relies on a lot of its art assets from another company. And that's cool because I like their work, and I'm looking for other art companies that outsource assets as well. So I'm going to investigate more and see, hey, they did a great job on cards like Debilitate. Let's see if they can do a good job on other cards. Because I do want to say that the art so far of Elder Scrolls Legends for this new set is better than the previous sets. Like, from what I can tell, one of the shortcomings that actually hurt Elder Scrolls Legends is the card art. Unrecognizable card art. Even to this day, when I look at an orc deck, I cannot tell the difference between the different orcs. Like, if a person was to play one orc and then another orc, I can barely tell the difference between the different cards. If you covered their names up and you changed the color and you lied to me on what the card was, or you just like switched the pictures around, you could fool me instantly. And that's not true with Gwent. That's not true even with Shadowverse. Shadowverse is increasingly becoming... Shadowverse's art style makes it a little bit more and more difficult for readability, but they've done a good job on pushing the line and basically saying, look, every single card should be recognizable the moment they see it. And Gwent does this too, because Gwent does the cool thing where each card... Actually, this is actually an interesting point. If Elder Scrolls Legends took a card from Gwent, I need to think for a second. I can't remember if Elder Scrolls Legends, when you play the card, can you see the text? I think you can. In Gwent, in order to make the art more readable, they actually make the art the full card, and they put all the text on the side. So if you open the card up or you hover the card up, that's when the text opens up full screen. And in Shadowverse and Gwent, they're both doing something similar, where they minimize the text you see on the card. I think Elder Scrolls Legend does that. I don't believe text is on the card. It's only in hand. So I gotta check that again. It's a little detail. But the art of Elder Scrolls Legends has really suffered in the past iterations from unreadability. And unreadability is also kind of related to bad art. Like, some of these cards looked really bad. Like, they didn't look very attractive, especially some of this 2 drops, 3 drops. They just looked kind of rushed in the sense it was like someone had a design document and they're saying, look, we need an orc. So draw me an orc. And then they applied that orc. So they drew like 5 or 6 orcs. And to cheapen the process, these orcs were not specific. They were not specified. Okay, the card was not designed. The art was not designed for the card. The card was fitted to an art. That came out wrong because I'm a little tired. But let's put it this way. The card designers... The art department said, look, we want an orc card, an elf card, and we don't even know what they're going to do. So just do me an orc, do me an elf, and we'll figure out what they do later. So they created art assets cheaply. So they got a bunch of orcs, and then later on they decided, well, what do we want these orcs to do? This orc does this orc does that orc does that. To me, I'm a little bit disappointed with that kind of approach because Bethesda is a great company. Bethesda has so many good IP. And actually, for a computer card game, personally, they might benefit from recycling some of their existing art more. Like, I have a feeling Sparky Pants Studios and Elder Scrolls Legends in general has not been communicative with the art, with the other departments and businesses in Elder Scrolls Legends, because Elder Scrolls Legends, for sure, as an IP, has 20 years of art assets created. So, like, let's take Dagoth-Ur. There are probably 1,000 Dagoth-Ur pictures that are fully illustrated in their archives. 1,000 is an understatement. It could be more. And with the presence of fan art, etc., 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 there's a high chance that art assets already exist for 99% of the stuff, especially all the characters in Elder Scrolls Legends. So Elder Scrolls Legends, if they wanted to cut down price and go for the best looking artwork, they probably shouldn't actually try to be recreating from scratch. They can just mine their archives and say, look, that's a great picture of Dagoth Ur. Let's revisit that art asset and let's spice it up. Let's do another layer on top of it. So that's an option. So that's something that really comes clear when you look at orcs, Khajiits, and all those other human. I mean, there's so many of these boring cards in Elder Scrolls Legends that they're just boring. Like the card art itself is boring, and it's probably because of the nondescript sort of general purpose. Hey, we need a human knight. Give me a human knight, and then they got a human knight. And if you pay cheaper, the cheaper you pay, the less time and less higher quality that you're going to get. And if you're not very specific on like, look, this card is about this, like it would be better if they were like, this is what the card's about. Can you do the art for this, right? And that kind of pipeline means that they're doing a good job and they're sort of ahead of the game, because it's actually possible to have cards designed and then do the art for it last, like to fit the art with it later, as opposed to do the art early and then fit cards to the art. That means the card design's lagging behind art department, and if that's the case, then you're going to get a lot of mismatches or a lot of not cohesive cards, because the art, maybe cards like called Brave Warrior, and the warrior doesn't look very brave because like maybe things kept changing, right? So organization and sequencing of sort of the development pipeline becomes really important. So Debilitate is a very good card in conscription lists as a mirror breaker. It's good in control decks as an Ice Storm replacement, especially for green decks. Like if you're running Scout, Scout is probably very happy this card was printed because Scout received such a huge nerf. I'm a huge fan of Parthenax looping and Giant Bats and Orjourney and Necromancers. And back in the day, apparently, Drain Vitality used to be level 3, -2/-2, hit all creatures, all enemy creatures. So Drain Vitality level 3 used to be Debilitate on steroids. That only hit your opponents. And they found that was too powerful, so they nerfed it to only one lane. Fair enough. And that actually made Scout's ability to defend itself way harder. Like, Drain Vitality losing its ability to hit both lanes for one Magicka, -2/-2, went from this deck was tier 0, like above tier 1, to basically this is a tier 2 deck. Because Scout, in my opinion, right now is a tier 2 deck, even with Debilitate. Because we suffered, our stabilization tools are not as good as Ebonheart. They're not as good as these conscription lists. They're not as good as Telvanni. They're not as good as Tribunal. So like, we hands down have worse stabilization tools, early game removal, than every other control deck. Our combo is cool, it's fun, and we have higher consistency than all those other decks for our late game combo because we're a 50 card deck. That's Scout's biggest thing. It's like, we're going to find Parthenax way easier than you are, and our card draw is above average because we're half green, half purple. So our green part is really carrying us. And with Merchant's Camels, we can dig deep. It's not unheard of for my Scout deck to basically be 15 cards left at the end of the game because we easily go through our deck. The other problem about Scout being a tier 2 deck is our late game is not on par with other people's late games. Slay's late game is better than Scout's. So, and that's no surprise because Ebonheart actually has access to all of Scout's good cards, like Red Brahmin. It has access to Odavings. It has access to Parthenaxes, although they don't use Parthenaxes because they're not using a Solitaire-based strategy. And they basically can use Solitaire with Falkirth Defiler and squish the Wimpy as removal. Like, they can basically remove targets and use... They can do Solitaire. They can Solitaire like 5 creatures at once. And that's the kind of late game. And they have OTKs. Scout does not have OTK. Like, Scout has... I'm going to play a 9/9 dragon, and his name's Parthenax.
and we're going to kill him, and we're going to play him again with the Soul Tear. And oh, by the way, there's a chance that if we used all our Soul Tears, because we were using them on giant bats just to stay alive, that our Parthodax, unluckily, does not get a Soul Tear, so our best combo piece is gone permanently. Bye, right? And for Slay has OTK. Like,